HAZCOM GHS coming out of the gate. I know that this has been, it was modified back, I think it went into effect in May of 2012, not mistaken. But so it's been around for a while. What I'm going to do is I've got a full-blown HAZCOM class that I'll share also by a zip folder that's got a lot of useful stuff in it. And it's just like a buffet. If you see something in there you like, you could use it at your training center. If you don't, then you know, it goes off to the side, or it doesn't get put on the plate in the first place. But the first thing we're going to look at is, I'll go ahead and share my screen, and we will want to do a breakout in here of maybe 15 minutes to work on a project. There's a couple of good hands-on projects that we could do with this. Let me see here. Whoops. I'm missing on my clicker this morning. There we go. And that's not the one I want. Okay, I'll go here. All right, here's the folder. So whenever you get this, and I think, can you guys all see this? I don't take anything for granted after Monday, but can everybody see this folder?
Yes, sir.
Cool.
Yes.
Thank you very much. So this is pretty much everything that's in it. I've done some modifications, added a couple of items, but we've got some safety data sheets for practicums. There's actually 3 of them in there, and they're products that we use a lot. A lot of times, if you're working with industrial painters, it's a good. Tnemic is a good thing to go with. Of course, Sherwin-Williams ProMar 200 we know is going to be residential, maybe some commercial, and then we've also got high build lacquer in gloss as the 3 different SDSs that you could choose from. On the PowerPoint materials, we've just got a PowerPoint in here. What I did was I turned the silica NIOSH page into a slide so that I could insert it into a PowerPoint or into a PDF. And with that, you know, we could go over that on the big screen. And also, here's a lot of other things in the instructors area where we've got different types of tasks or different projects that we could work on, including, now we're not going to work on this today, but the NIOSH practicum works really well. It's got the same safety data sheets in it, and in that we've got a exercise. Here's a description of how we do the exercise. There's a NIOSH pocket guide key. So let me click on, just to give you an example. Whoops, I don't want that. I don't want that example. So for instance, on the key, this is going to be all the different questions that and where to find it in the NIOSH pocket guides. That may vary on what version you've got, but what you'll do essentially, there's 18 different chemicals that are in this product, and you could assign everybody a different chemical, and then you could have a question sheet to have them look up particular things in the NIOSH pocket guide for that particular chemical. And it's a pretty good exercise to do. And we're going to go ahead. We've also got something for a Sensodyne pump as far as a lesson plan for that. Got a generic HAZCOM written plan in there. And just in case somebody wants to see what one looks like, even though we should know where one is, and we should even have one for our own facilities for sure. That's the one thing I did notice is we're missing a lot of these different plans for our own facilities, and for mine definitely we were. So we had to write up a bunch, which we should have. It's required of employers too. Can everybody see the PowerPoint for the hazard communication?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay.
No.
Well, I'm going to close out of this then and reshare. And All righty. Now you probably can, right?
Yes.
Cool.
Need to presenter mode.
All righty. So with this, we all know that this went into effect in the main change. Well, one of the minor changes actually was right to know to right to understand. When we're talking about chemicals, this is just a little background on whenever some of these changes happened. The fact that the focus is on understand now, not just to know the hazards, but to actually understand them. We also know that the globally harmonized system went into effect then. It's better organized. Before, the information was required to be on the safety data sheets. They were just, you wasn't always sure in what section. So, and we talked about the different, well, like you're noticing that this is in the general industry standards. So this is 1910. And when we're talking about the HAZCOM written programs, we should have, everybody should have one written. All employees should know where to find it. There's other aspects of it we'll get into in just a minute that should be covered. Some of the things that's introduced into this is different classes or types of hazards. That's going to be, as an example, we see here acute toxicity or oral, explosive, carcinogenic, or flammable. This is for the chemical manufacturer's parts. So this is some of the things that should be added from the chemical manufacturer's part. The categories, this is the most confusing out of all the changes that I saw. I don't know if we adopted a European method here or not, but whenever we're looking at scales of most dangerous, almost everything we do, if we've got a 1 to 5, a 5 is the most dangerous, right? So, I mean, if we've got the worst hurricane coming in, what's it going to be? It's going to be a Cat 5, right? If we got the worst tornado, it's going to be an F5, not an F1, but this is flip-flopped. So this is one thing that I always try to emphasize to our members so that they don't get confused on this, is the fact that 1 is the most dangerous and 5 is the least. Some of the other things, here we've got the, on the label containers, we've always got the manufacturer down on the bottom left. We could see that we've got prevention, response, storage, and disposal on here, and we've got a pictogram. So the labels did change. They're going to change a little bit on our part too, on what we're required to do on job sites. The manufacturer should have safety data sheets in a format that is available to those that are purchasing and using their products. As far as the employer's part, a lot of this was already in the old HAZCOM written plan. You know, they had to develop one, implement it, maintain it. They had to list all the hazardous chemicals used in the company. They had to plan to inform the employees of the hazards. One of the main things is plan to include other companies' employees for multi-employer work sites. We're going to talk a little bit about multi-employer work sites on Friday also. But it's always, that's something that there's been an emphasis on too, and that's, we talked about the dangers of silica from those that are working around us. This is a classic case of if everybody is looking out for other employees in the area, then we could get added protections. The written plan itself covers labels, safety data sheets, and training. Our plan must be maintained and at the workplace and available to our designated representative or our BA or an official from the union. In our case, plan must be maintained and updated. Biggest problem with almost anything, especially in written or even in digital form, is keeping things updated. Things are always new and improved, right? So labels on shipped containers affixed by the manufacturer is usually okay. And we're going to talk about workplace labels that we might put on. Labels themselves should have the product identifier, in this case xylene, the signal word, it's going to be warning or danger, the hazard statement, a pictogram, a precautionary statement, and shipped labels or containers must also have the name, address, phone number of the manufacturer. The employer is not required to label portable containers into which hazardous chemicals are transferred as long as it's intended for the immediate use of the employee performs a transfer. So this was kind of an exception for us. I don't believe whenever the HAZCOM written standard first came out, that it had the exceptions, and what that could do is it could cause a lot of confusion on the job site. Because could you imagine having to label every cut-in pot that we've got, or every pan of mud, or anything else like that? So the key is that as long as we pour the product into the temporary container that we're going to be in possession of at all times, then we have the opportunity to read the label. So if we can read the label and it's in our possession, then they've made an exception that you don't have to label it. So as long as we're not handing it off, if we've got somebody else working in there, we are a second shift, we can't just hand them the product. It needs to go back in the label container, and they need to remove the product themselves so that they know what it is that they're using for. What might be another example is we see a lot of times somebody put a wet cloth or a piece of plastic over a cut-in pot and go for lunch. That's a no-no. Shouldn't be doing that. We need to keep it around us if we're going to have it in an unlabeled. What's some of the dangers that we've seen for not having labels on things, or having them mislabeled is even a greater danger? You guys seen any examples on a job site where something that wasn't labeled properly could have hurt? Go ahead. I'm
Stories
sorry.
about people drinking MEK and stuff out of like water bottles and Mountain Dew bottles and stuff.
Yeah,
Yes.
they put it on the stage to put another splash in it when it's setting up on them.
Yes, and you know, we've got glazers will use solvents and stuff sometimes too, right? Or alcohol, and put them in maybe a water bottle, right? So
One of the major things that we had in the play is we would buy MEK and xylene by the drums. It was cheaper that way, and then we would put on a drum stand and fill up fivers.
sure.
When they weren't labeled properly, we used Tenemic 99% of the time. If you put MEK and zinc, if anyone's used it, you know it boils and cooks hard as a rock of concrete in about 10 minutes. So you go and lose your whole pump, lines, gun, and everything.
Wow.
That was a huge mistake all the time that you see with zinc and putting the wrong thinners in there.
Well, that's I'm thank you. That's something too. So it's not just a hazard as far as health-wise, it's also a hazard job-wise. So that it could get us in big trouble too. And the job, a lot of those times, if you're working with those products, you're working on heavy deadlines. And if you,
Are these new updates to the new HAZCOM that came out in 15 or 16, or is this what came out then?
no, this is what came out then. So these were already in effect. So even though this isn't something that's occurred over the span of your 502, it is something that that has had recent changes, because anything that was taken prior to May of 2012 is considered old. And even though this didn't have an expiration on the training, kind of like an OSHA 10 or an OSHA 30 doesn't, some of these training that, even though we're supposed to update it, keep up to date, some of these trainings will be radically changed, and OSHA will say, before this date, if you had this training, it's no longer any good. So they want you to be retrained in it, and they'll consider it as if you haven't been adequately trained.
So you
Does that make
can't.
sense?
So when you go to lunch, you can't put a rag over your brush and bucket.
No, if it's not labeled.
You know what? I never knew that, and
Yeah.
you know,
Same thing with, and it happens all the time. Same thing with plastic. You know, we'll cover it up with plastic, or put a piece of drywall even over our pan of mud. Even though, I mean, that could be a violation, even though we know that the product that's in there really isn't harmful or not.
The way
Kevin,
that we
Yes.
got around that is we take a plastic 5-gallon bucket, label the 5-gallon bucket that's got a lid, and you take your paint pot, set it down in the 5-gallon bucket, put the lid on it and cover it. It's labeled, and then you can
Yeah.
leave it in the work area and go to take a break or go to lunch, and then come back, and you unscrew the top on your plastic bucket, take your paint back out, and go back to work.
Yeah, no, that's a good example.
if the paint is in the existing can it came in, it's still legal, right? It
Correct.
Can't be in a different can.
Absolutely. So you couldn't have transferred it to a cut-in pot and then left it unattended.
as long as you can read the label and it's not covered with paint, correct?
Correct. That's another problem too. You know, a lot of times, what do? We will continue to pour into a 5 or a bucket that we've got that we're pumping out of, and sometimes that label will get covered in the process. So occasionally we'll need to switch that out, right? Put a new bucket in there. Very good.
I just want to clarify something. So if the foreman decides to make all the setup for their workers, then he's not following this standard, correct?
Not if he is putting things in unlabeled containers.
Himself.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
The individual needs to do that transfer. And that's kind of how we got the exception too. So on these, and I talked about yesterday having a safety data sheet that had all the sections in the right place, but was old. So we've got 16 sections now, and they all have to be in specific spots. So like if we know that we're dealing with fire, then we know we're going to find that in the 5th section. So we can immediately go to that section. First aid is going to be 4th and so forth. And we'll get into that a little bit more here. And thank you guys for the great comments and what you've added to the class. So the safety data sheets, there's a lot of confusion whenever it comes to these two. I still think the best method is to have a physical safety data sheet on a job site for every product that you have. I know that there's other options. There is an electronic option, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But if we order a product and we ask for a safety data sheet, the distributor is supposed to send one out, or the lumber yard. So they're supposed to send one out with the product. The only problem is that also where do we keep them, right? Where's a good spot to keep safety data sheets? Anybody? Maybe a game
Yeah,
box?
there's a safety,
Game box,
you can actually
job
hang it on
box.
the wall by the products. They make racks for that, and you can hang the
Okay.
book and all that stuff by the rack.
The GM should have
That's-
probably some of them, copies of them as well.
Yes. So, and these are all areas we're familiar with for sure. But these, and thank you, Ken and Joe. We've got one thing to keep in mind is the employee needs to be able to access it quickly. So if we get a paint injection or something, they're going to need to be able to get to that safety data sheet in a relatively quick amount of time. And they're going to have to know where it is. So like, let's say if you've got it in a book or something, or if you've got them placed together in the top left section of a gang box, what could be a problem with that? As if they're not organized well, we could have a whole bunch of multiples. We could have old ones in with new ones, right? We're going to want to get the latest. I always suggest everyone that they throw out all the safety data sheets from that job site and then order new ones when they order product on the next one. That way you always know you got an updated one, and you're always current, and you're not getting multiples that could cause confusion too. And since they send them out, why not? And it makes it really good if somebody does have an accident to be able to send it to the hospital with them so that the doctors know exactly what they're dealing with, because so many of our products have chemicals that vary, and the approach that the doctor care takes is going to be it's going to be necessary for them to know how to approach it. We know if we are injected with different products, then it's going to spread differently also in the body, right? So it could be a difference in somebody keeping a leg or even alive in that case. Now,
Hey, Kevin,
yeah.
this is Ken, can I, and you said it, I think too, and you said it kind of a few times in a different way, but it's so important to make sure that they got the proper date on them and they're updated.
Absolutely.
When we get audited for some of the programs that we do throughout our training centers, they make sure that we got the latest version. So, and I think it's every 6 months a date changes on there. I would have to verify that, but I think it's every 6 months. Even if the SDS didn't change in itself, the date changes.
Well, how about it, Ken, with the cast and the macropoxy, There was a time where they were changing that like every 4, 5, 6 months. Like, sometimes you see they haven't been changed in 3, 4, 5 years, revised.
Right.
But macropoxy did like 4 changes in like 2 years.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so it's if you're gonna stockpile them, I mean, I know I do. I know I would have to have some kind of a schedule, maybe once quarterly at least, to double check on those
Now,
if you're gonna stockpile them.
the electronics copies is kind of a gray area. How do you explain that? Because now we all have these fancy things in our hands, right?
Right.
All the workers have them, all the apprentices. It says it's acceptable here, right? What's the no barriers mean? I mean, does that count it legal if someone has able to go on their smartphone and search it right there for a doc? Is that good enough, or is it something we have to email to them or text to them?
Would it
This,
be if the game box is locked? So that
Yes.
would be a barrier,
Yeah.
right?
no, that would be a barrier. That's a great example, Deb, of a barrier. Or let's say those, Joe, just that handheld device that you've got, if you're going to rely on that, does it have a password? If something happens to Joe and somebody needs to find that safety data sheet, are they going to be able to access it off of that piece of equipment? So if we've got it stored on a laptop or something and it's in the main trailer of the job site and the trailer's locked, that's an obstacle. If we get in there and it's got a password on the computer, that's an obstacle.
No, I
If-
get that, but can
Yeah.
they search on their own device themselves, or is it something that we have to supply for them?
No, let's put it this way, they have to be accessible in a timely manner. The employer's supposed to make sure of that. I wouldn't rely on somebody else's device. I wouldn't. And there's gray areas in here. We need to look up a letter of interpretation on that, because that's a great question. It's probably been asked. So before this class is up,
Kevin,
that's,
can I make a comment on that too?
Yeah.
It also depends, Joe, if you connect to the internet, what if you don't have connectivity?
that was also, yes.
The battery dies, so maybe on the cloud, and then all the devices are syncing. I know Alltech in our area, they do that. What's nice about having digital comp is that the digital director or the safety director for the company can find and update the plans and SDSs and all that. And with one click, everybody gets the updated version. So there are pros and cons to that. So you got to be careful. But like Kevin said, as long as it's provided within a reasonable amount of time when needed, then that is sufficient. But think about this, though. The burden of providing that is on the employer. The employer responsible for that.
Yeah.
Ultimately, us as workers, we're responsible for our own safety. So I do want to have that ability as a member, as a worker, to look something up in case I need it.
Well, I've heard stories where foremen or companies where people, after having because I teach the HAZCOM for our facility.
Yeah.
And I've heard stories where they're like, well, where's the, they go back and where's the SDS sheets, where's the product data sheet, all that stuff. They're like, you got a phone, go search it, look at it.
No,
I mean, but you know what? If they're on the phones at work, they're going to get in trouble for that too as well.
right.
So what I'm saying is, I feel like contractors and foremen are using that as their scapegoat for being out of compliance with the standard itself.
I would not rely on that. And I'm in agreement with you, Joe. I think that's a very poor system.
I mean, I always had to have a paperwork.
Thank you, Dave, too.
We didn't have cell phones and all that, back in the day.
Sure. The only way I would rely is a system like Dave is talking about, to where it actually is downloaded on the device. I would not rely on an internet connection at all, unless it was just a matter of just updating the storage on my device. But I wouldn't rely on a cloud. I mean, if we lose, a lot of times, especially as industrial painters, you're going to be out maybe on a dam project or somewhere else. It's either got a bunch of concrete, steel, bad signal, you're out of the area. We don't always, and everybody in here knows that the internet is something that's going to go down during a teaching segment, or just like we talked about this morning, there's going to be issues. And that's just like, even whenever I make a PowerPoint, I never embed links to a YouTube page, to anything like that, because if you get somewhere and it just buffers and buffers, or is not able to pull it up at all. Sometimes the internet will go down, and it's just one more thing that could go wrong. It's kind of like on a job site. Almost anything that we could eliminate that could go wrong, we're going to be better off for it. I will always download the video and embed it into the PowerPoint. It makes them longer, but myself, that's the only way I'm comfortable with it. That way is if I am back to the Stone Age, no internet, no anything, then at least it'll play. And it usually plays quicker and is more dependable. But
Yeah, Kevin, if I can make just a quick comment too.
Sure.
Going towards what Joe was talking about. Today, you can find online storage, cloud storage for free or very affordable now. One option would be, let's say, a Google Drive. You can create 15 gigabyte hard drive on the cloud for free. If you have your SDS sheets, you can have those uploaded on there, and then just the spots where you're going to have, when somebody might need an SDS, like in your training center, just print a QR code, laminate it, put it right next to that spot. So all that person has to do is take a picture of that. It takes him directly to the spot where you got all the SDS sheets. So technology can help along in that regard as well.
But with the
Absolutely.
cloud, relying on internet connection and data.
If it's inside a building, absolutely. But
I'm saying if you're saving everything to the cloud and you're somewhere where you don't have internet or data, you can't pull it.
right.
It's got limitations, obviously, but it makes it readily available if somebody needed it, though. They can get it.
Now, some of these, I mean, if it's got some things, we'll pull things off of the cloud and store it on the device. I would feel much more confident with a system like that. But in most cases, it's going to work great. Dave also mentioned printing it off or taking a picture of it. That'll work too. It's one of the things with our students who may continually lose their calendar. I always suggest to them, take a picture of it, because they've got their phones. Unless something happens to their phone too, they can always drop back on that picture. But again, are you going to send your phone to the hospital? What if you can't print it off? It's just easier. It's much easier to do this, to hand this to the ambulance or take it with them to the hospital. That's where I think paper is going to be a plus. And if it don't cost nothing to bring it, it's just a matter of keeping it all correct and together. So locations of the written program too, and the safety data sheets. This is one of the biggies that it's going to really stand out. Training should include at least the methods and observations used to detect hazardous chemicals, the chemical hazard in each work area, specific protective measures of the work area, different emergency procedures, PPE, and work practices. The safety data sheets now, when we're talking about how they're set up, we do have an order of information. The exercise I would like for us to do is going to help us, and just like we talked about yesterday, I think it's really, really, really helpful if we can get them to look up stuff. They're going to learn it better. It's amazing in these classes how many times we'll have members that have 20 years experience in the field and they don't know how to read a safety data sheet. They don't know and Joe, I mean, I'm sure you find that too. Whenever you're teaching a class, it's really, a lot of them have never seen one. And that's changing, thank God, but a lot of them have never seen one. So
that's one of the practices I make them do. And like you said, I make them do macropoxy and tenemic.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. No, that's
two different ones. I mean, Sherwin-Williams did simplify theirs a little bit.
Right.
But tenemic's kind of black and white, all right there.
It is.
Easier to navigate, but I make them do both of them to identify. Because I mean, you're teaching them about even just humidity and temperatures and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They don't even exists and stuff.
No, you're 100% right, and that's a great point.
I got a question, and maybe it's for Spencer, and because I know that when I was in the field, and some of the stuff that we worked with came from out of country. Some of the epoxies that we did for Intel.
Yes.
And I knew that it was material safety data sheet at the time. I knew on the material data sheet, not all the information was on there. at that point in time, it was legal because they said it was a trade secret. And so not every chemical was listed because of the trade secret rule, and it came out of country. Can they still do that?
No, well, they can list it as a trade secret, but they have to disclose what that chemical is to a physician or a treatment facility in case of an emergency.
So on the safety data sheet, it has to say trade secret, but then they would have to reveal it if I went to a clinic.
Yes. So if the
So
kind
it's the same.
Yep. Unfortunately.
Back
and that
when
is,
you were in the field, Ken, those MSDSs were on stone. weren't they?
That is true. That is
So
true.
they were a lot heavier and harder to get to. So
So if that product
like
was
it.
out of the country, how would you be able to get somebody to answer that question?
see, and because it's got to have an emergency contact number, and it's also got to have the manufacturer's name on that both the label and the safety data sheet.
And the time zone's different, so ours is 2 o'clock in the afternoon, they're 2 o'clock in the morning, they'd still have
Those-
to answer that phone number.
Yeah, those should be emergency contact numbers. So they should be reachable at any time, and for it to be legal in here. And that's the other thing too, like Ken talked about with the differences. A lot of times we may get high-end paints from Germany or something like, or places over in Europe, and that in that particular case, the globally harmonized system was the thought, and it was a good thought. It was a good thought to try to get everything on the same page so that workers could be informed and work safely. So all labels must address these things: a signal word, a hazard statement, a pictogram, and a precautionary statement. And those that are shipped must also have the name of the manufacturer, the address, and the phone number. They're going to have 2 signal words, either danger or warning. They both can't be on a product. Danger is going to be a more harmful. Warning could just be an irritant. And a description of the potential hazards. A pictogram, a picture warning system. There's 9 of them that are approved. This is examples of some of those. This would be an example, flame. They're all black with a red diamond. So we could see here oxidizers, irritant, exploding bomb here as an explosive or self-reactive. Corrosive, that's the same. It's just happens gases under pressure, is a cylinder tilted. Any kind of health hazard, this is a symbol for that. Could be a carcinogen, respiratory sensitizer, reproductive toxicity, acute toxicities, a good skull, crossbones, and the dreaded dead fish and tree. So this is an environmental toxicity symbol. This isn't on, it's not required by OSHA, but it is part of the recognized labeling system. And precautionary statements, here's examples. It's a phrase describing measures to be taken to prevent or minimize. And I'm kind of going a little bit fast here. I would like for you guys to be able to at least touch on that safety data sheet. I think it's a great exercise, and we're going to get into that. The pictograms we just covered. Some labels there may be blank areas. For instance, on non-hazardous gas cylinder labels, they may not have a disposal statement because there may not be disposal issues. And I sent you guys one of those PDFs was a document that talked about LC 50 and LD 50. So whenever we're looking at some of these safety data sheets like here, we can look over here and it's got LC 50 rat or RAT and LD 50 rat. What does that mean? One thing that I found, and I also sent you a sheet that's got acronyms that are common in this section. If you're using acronyms in a PowerPoint, somebody is going to inevitably ask you what that means. And it's easy to get stumped. So it's good to have the acronyms in some of these areas that we're not really using on a daily basis. But does anybody know what a LC50 rat or RAT means? And we see 4 hour over there to the right. LC is lethal concentration. And it's simple as could be. We're looking at something really technical here. But LC is lethal concentration where 50% of the rats die within 4 hours at that particular concentration over to the right. And LD is lethal dose. So lethal concentration is going to be whenever it is in, most of the time it's going to be air. Sometimes it can be water. So it's going to be whatever concentration of that chemical is in that water. They also factor in the weight of the animal. Could be a rabbit, could be a rat. In this case, it's a rat. Lethal dose most of the time is going to be injected or it's going to be fed. So it's going to be in the food or injected. Can be on the skin. That can be a lethal dose also. So as we could see down here, some of these don't have. If we go to toluene, 50% of the rats died within 4 hours at 4,000 parts per million and lethal concentration. And lethal dose, of course, 5,000 micrograms per body weight per kilogram is going to be the lethal dose. Here's the confusion on the categories. Again, category 1's the worst. Category 5 is the least harmful. Job site labeling isn't just a matter of just putting something on it anymore. The label summary, we're talking about the name and address and phone number of the manufacturer that's shipped, the product identifier, the signal word, the pictogram, hazard statements, precautionary statements. All the labels are going to they're going to have these elements on it. They might be listed a little different. The company's always down on the lower left that I see. Our part of understanding, it's a 16 sections and where they're at. The identification, it's going to be, number 1 is always going to be the same identifier that's used on the label. It's also going to, the recommended use of the chemical, restrictions, name, address, telephone number of the manufacturer, emergency phone number. So if we're looking at a safety data sheet, that emergency phone number is going to be in the first. Hazard identification is going to have the signal word, the hazard statements, symbols, precautionary statements. And I'm just kind of hitting on some of these, again, time related. And this PowerPoint is going to be in that zip folder too that you guys can have. Substances, composition, that's kind of the ingredients. Chemical name, common names and synonyms, the CAS numbers and other unique identifiers. Here's where Ken was talking about too, in the composition. Manufacturers can still list some of the ingredients as trade secrets. In case of a medical emergency, the manufacturer must divulge chemicals to the treating doctor or nurse. So we can finally find out what Coke's secret recipe is, right? If we go in from too much Coke the night, Coca-Cola the night before. So first aid measures, it's going to be in 4. So again, it's good for them to know the section so they know immediately they can go to 4 for first aid measures. Firefighting measures is 5. 6 is accidental release measures. 7 is handling and storage. 8 is exposure controls. Here's a big important section for us too. PELs, threshold limit values, appropriate engineering controls, individual protection and PPE. Section 8's big for us. Physical and chemical properties can be big too. Joe touched on that whenever he was talking about like some of the issues with humidity and some of the, whenever you're getting into the industrial side, this section is even more important. Whenever we're looking at, odor threshold, for instance, too. In odor, we might be working around hydrogen sulfide or something that is going to have that pungent, rotten smell, a sulfur smell at first, but our body becomes really accustomed to it quickly and we can no longer sense it after a while. It's one of the most dangerous products we'll be around, by the way. If you look it up in a NIOSH pocket guide, its explosive range is ungodly and it's immediately dangerous to life and health at extremely low levels. It's one of the products to highlight. Flashpoint is going to be here. Evaporation rate might be big depending on the products we're working with, right? Also upper, lower flammability or explosive limits if we're working in a confined space. vapor pressure, vapor density, those things can all, where's it going to gather in water or in air, the auto ignition temperature, decomposition, or the viscosity. Everybody knows what viscosity is. It's how we've all changed our oil at some point too. Also, 10 is stability and reactivity. 11 is toxicological information, routes of exposure, symptoms, so forth. These sections are part of it, but they're not required by OSHA, but they are part of the GHS. These are all regulated by other agencies. Ecological information. What might be an agency that regulates ecological information?
EPA.
EPA, great, awesome. What about disposal? This one could be, and this may vary depending on the areas you're in. Could be Department of Natural Resources, right? Could be, I mean, there's a lot of, sometimes different agencies will, in some states, will oversee some parts of these areas. Transportation is
Clean Harbors do that, Kevin?
Pardon me?
Clean Harbors, are they one of the companies that does disposal? Or is that just cleanup?
That is not, that I know of, that's not going to be an agency that oversees this.
Oh, okay.
That's going to be in a little, the disposal is usually going to be EPA or Department of Natural Resources, depending on your area. But great question, Nicholas.
Thank you.
Transportation information is going to be what? DOT. Absolutely, Corky. Regulatory information, you know, again, we could be talking about the EPA there. Other information, date of last revision is going to be in 16. That's where we were talking about earlier, if you got a new one or an old one, that's a good way to know too, is in 16. So basically, in summary, these dates have all been, they've all come and gone. This is in full effect. We should know how to understand a written plan, know how to access it, understand the labeling system, know the 16 sections, know where they're kept on a job site. And if we could, and I don't know how many of you have access to the items I emailed yesterday, but even if you can open them up, let me see here. We might just, other than splitting up, let's see here, we ain't really got enough time to break up into different sections. We're already at 17 after. So why don't we just look at this as a whole? That way, if you don't have it printed too, I'm going to bring up let's bring up so I'll ask a question and we could bring up the student sheet. So this, I've always found that irregardless of what the task is, if we're gonna have students dig into something, it's kind of good to kind of point them in a direction. It's just like with the NIOSH pocket guide that you're going to find in here. Instead of just giving them a chemical and having them look up a particular chemical, not a product, but a chemical in the NIOSH pocket guide, or often the NIOSH the phone app, which is a very good free app. If you guys go to your app store and type in NIOSH, you're going to see two really good products in there. One is the NIOSH pocket guide. The other is, if you scroll down, is going to be their hearing. So their audible, their sound device. It's a really good device too. It's kind of a little hard to read on the screen sometimes for the sound, but you can email or text yourself a report. It'll give you the time-weighted average. It'll give you all kinds of information. It's really neat. I'll try to show you that too before we get out of here. But under this this particular, like this practicum here, again, not a test, it's a practicum. So it's something that can count toward class time. according to the OSHA PEL, or measure in micrograms per cubic meter of air. Now there is a difference there, right? Well, it's not in parts per million.
I
Yeah.
cannot,
I don't think it opened.
I don't think it opened up. You're
just
not
do your
sharing what
folder.
you're looking at.
I am sorry. Hang on a minute. And we'll try
At
this
least this
again.
time we told you.
Yes, and I appreciate the heck out of it. Hang on just a minute. I'm going to have to exit this and open it on my computer, I think, to get this thing to share properly. Okay. We'll do it this way. And I'm going to bring up the safety data sheet and I'll read the questions and we could come up with this. And I think I should be able to share it through a few things. Okay, where are we at? There it is. I think we're good. All right, now we can see this, right?
Yes.
Cool. I'm starting to learn it a little bit. I'm not always, may not be as efficient. I'll try to learn some shortcuts. All right, on this particular, so this is a safety data sheet for Tnemic. This is the one that I mentioned earlier that I like because it's got the 16 sections in order, but it's one of the things, Joe, like you mentioned, they can catch the date of, and Ken also was talking about it. Somebody's going to call you on that, and that's good. You want them to catch it. They're also going to call you on the material safety data sheet part, so that's also cool. So if we're looking at, according to the OSHA PEL measured in micrograms per cubic meter, which ingredient is the most hazardous would be question number one. So if first off, as we're looking through these sections of this particular product, where are we going to find that? What do you guys think? Any thoughts?
What are we looking for?
Section 8.
We're looking for the most hazardous ingredient in this product, according to the OSHA PEL.
Whatever you're at.
IDLH, if it has anything IDLH on it.
Will be in section 8.
All right, let's take a peek. And those are all great. With the deal is we could find a lot of different information, even the same information in different sections sometimes, right? But if we're dealing with PEL, as Veronica just called out, it's always going to be in exposure controls and personal protection. So there's where we're going to go to find out according to the PEL, and that's what we're looking for. And we're looking for micrograms per cubic meter, not parts per million. So which of these products is going to be the most harmful?
Silica.
Silica.
Silica, absolutely. Wonderful question, or wonderful answer. Job, Adolph and Veronica. And why is that? I mean, it's the smallest number.
The smaller, the worse off you are.
Right. And often that will not be understood, right? Because there'll be
in your beer.
So if we look at that, a lot of times because we're looking at the most harmful, again, back to the categories and how I said that's backwards, we are going to be looking for the highest number often. So a lot of times you're going to see when people get this wrong, they're going to get it wrong because they're going to go after the highest micrograms per cubic meter. But if it takes less poison to harm or hurt you or kill you, then it's a more harmful product, right? So a smaller dose would be more harmful. So the second question in this particular case would be if this product is ingested, what are the first aid procedures? So when we're looking around now, again, we know that's going to be in section 4, right? Because first aid is always in section 4. At first, if they're not familiar with a safety data sheet, it's going to take them a little while to look up this information. But if you've got other safety data sheets that you can use, like Joe was talking about, and you've got an activity for them like this, and they get to having to answer these questions, they'll get quicker and quicker, and they'll know where these sections are, even more relevant. So when we're looking for, flashpoint, we're going to know it. When was the safety data sheet last prepared or revised? We're going to know that's in 16. And so it's a good, very good project to get to where you can familiarize yourself and navigate around it pretty good. And does that all make sense? I'll try to pull up another thing here real quick just to show you on the safety data sheet how it's laid out on the NIOSH Pocket Guide or Practicum. So I'll pull this up, be right with you, hang tight. And, okay. With that, we've got, where's it at? There it is. Okay, now I think we could see this, right? So here was a safety data sheet for Sherwood, high build lacquer, gloss, Sherwin-Williams. Again, it's an older one, but in this is where I was talking about, and we could do this with different products depending on the members that we've got in the classroom at the time. There's different ones in here. For instance, number one would get, so one student would get VM&P naphtha. And then of course, one would get toluene. And what this is this is separate sheets that are going to have separate products highlighted. And if you hand it out to the students in the classroom, they're all going to get a different chemical. And in getting that chemical, then you could have them research, like this one, acetone. They could have them research that. There's a key that's in this folder that's got what general area you're going to find this in. It's got a page on it, but it's going to matter what year, because we've got the NIOSH Pocket Guides library. So, and as we talked about, a lot of them are 2007 and or older. So it's going to depend on which one you have on exactly what page you might find this on. But you can also have them use the app on their phone. But it's more fun. They got to dig through the books. But you're gonna find that some of them will get like this VM&P naphtha. They're going to get that wrong because they're going to look up naphtha, and there's a world of difference between VM&P naphtha and naphtha. And so whenever they're going through and they're going to find out what kind of respiratory protection you need, is it immediately dangerous to life and health, what the PELs are in the NIOSH Pocket Guide. The one thing with the safety data sheets and an updated version of a NIOSH Pocket Guide, the PELs are almost always going to be less in the NIOSH Pocket Guide, right, than they are on a lot of these safety data sheets. Again, and these, just like the OSHA standards, these doesn't mean that they're safe at this level. It just means that these are the bare minimums. So when we're looking at acetone is a big one. I mean, that used to, what did acetone commonly get used for?
Fingernail remover?
Yes, excellent. So fingernail, I mean, so this was a common household product that many of our loved ones put on their hands to get fingernail polish off. And whenever you look at the warnings on that, it's through the roof. It's about, not in contact with the skin, what you got to do, all the steps you got to take to if you do have contact with the skin. It's an eye opener on a lot of these products. Same thing.
It's strange you knew that, James.
No. Another thing that's really good to do in this class, because, well, actually, even in a confined space class, you know how we'll do the section with the test tube or with the tubes, and we're doing the sample pumps, and we're checking for alcohol, or we're checking for ammonia. Well, we'll put them in containers, like Tupperware containers or something that's unmarked. It's also a great example of something that's unmarked and how it can be mistaken for something else. Well, it was too easy really to realize that a certain product was all going to be ammonia. So what I thought about was trying to get products that look the same in a clear container that are going to register different with the tubes. So instead of just going with Windex and then it only showing up on the ammonia, I gave half the class windshield washer solution and half the class Windex, and they both look the same. They're that light blue color. And I actually even started splitting it up into thirds and giving some people blue Powerade. So you had blue Powerade, you had windshield washer solution, you had Windex, all extremely different on their ingredients and on their safety levels. So, and some, the alcohol tube on the naturally on the Powerade is not going to work on either. On some, the alcohol is going to be present in the windshield washer solution, and on some, the ammonia is going to be present in the Windex, right? So it's just a good example to say, this is, how do you know? We're not supposed to be smelling them, right? So that's not supposed to be one of the techniques to find out what's in it, is to smell it or taste it or to feel it in some cases. But often that's one of the things we go to. And I'm kind of over on my time, and I don't want to be stealing any time from Mr. Arvaio. I know he's going to have another wonderful presentation. Not putting any pressure on him. But Dave?
I got to answer that. I knew that because on one of my first industrial jobs, I was looking for a way to get epoxy off, and amazingly, that did it.
Stop sharing here. You was thinking about that for a little bit, weren't you, James?
Well, I didn't want to be depressing and say I worried about cancer.
I'll leave it to our friends and coworkers. All right, Dave.
Is that women who wear false fingernails soak their fingers in acetone.
Do they?
Oh yeah, to remove the plastic fingernails and stuff, they soak it in acetone for 20-25 minutes. And I try to explain to them how dangerous that is, but they don't.
I mean, it was amazing. The first time I ever looked it up in a pocket guide, I was like, holy cow. But Dave, you ready, brother?
Absolutely. Let's do this.
Go ahead, run with it. I'm sorry, I took a couple of minutes.
That's all right. You're good. All right, so I want to start off by saying that most of us have seen the front end of Zoom, right? The other thing I want to say is that we don't have to be intimidated by it, because if we start doing remote training, video conferencing, and all that, this is a great way of doing it because it allows for a lot of different interactions to take place. So that's what I'm going to walk you through today. So in my personal experience, we started talking about going to virtual training, online training, that kind of thing, in the end of January, February, and that was the first time I heard about Zoom. And then we had to pick it up and learn in a hurry. So there's a lot that we can do in a short period of time. And I'm going to show you those little tricks, how to set up that video conference, how to run it, but also how to anticipate what the students are going to see and how that might affect how you have to set it up. So I'm going to start out by saying that I know the past couple of days that I've done presentations, and when some of us have done it, we see people looking at the screen because they can't really see the stuff because it's so small, right? So my personal recommendation is if you can at your training centers, two displays, it's a great way to go when you're setting up your presentation, and when you're presenting as well. There's no substitute for that, but that also creates additional problems, especially when we're talking about Zoom. The one problem is that the stuff that seems too small, when the people are seeing it on the other end, they have or you have the resolution on your display set too high, which is going to make everything seem small on the other side. So for me, I have a 4K external display, extended desktop, and that is why you saw everything so small. So this morning, in order to prevent that and facilitate so that I don't have to be blowing up all the stuff that I'm showing you, I went into my settings, display settings, and then I set it to a lower resolution. So we're now looking at 720. That's what you're going to be seeing when I start sharing my screen and all that, which should make it more readable, the stuff that you see on the screen. The other thing that I personally recommend is headphones. So if you have to step out of the room, somebody else is talking, if you're grabbing something else, you don't miss out on the conversation. Depending on the headphones that you have, you get about 50 feet distance from your device. So that's also going to play into it, might help you. So those are the things that we're going to look at today. So hopefully by the end of today, you're going to have a better understanding, probably be better or less intimidated by Zoom, and see some of the potential that Zoom has. So I'm going to show you one of the functions that they have, and I want to thank Nicole. She was kind enough to place this poll question. I have access to it. So there we go. Thank you, Nicole. I was gonna do it myself, but now she's done it. So can everybody see the poll? Can you see it? Do me a favor and answer that question.
Sorry, David, I didn't mean to step on
Just to
your
kind
foot.
of,
I was just ready for it.
Yes, we can see
Yes, I
it.
answered it.
that's okay. That's awesome, Nicole. I know you're right on it. I apologize on my end because I should have asked you. You're better than me at this, so. All right, so the reason for this question, I wanted to get a feel for where we're at as far as the experience. Some people are using this software on personal things. So when where everybody was quarantined at home, a lot of people are using this to kind of talk to their friends, have their meetings and all that. This is another way that you can use this. So I'm looking at right now 10 people, some experience. We have 2 people who've done quite a bit of it, and then we have 4 people with no experience. Is that pretty accurate? So
Yeah, hey,
I would imagine that yeah, go ahead, Ken.
David, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to bring this out there, and I could be absolutely wrong, but that's what I was told by Job Corps leadership, is that with them being that they're a government agency, that's what their grants through and all that stuff. They're not allowing Zoom at this point in time. They have to go through another means to actually train the particular Job Corps students, I think. I mean, they're looking at this and they hope they can use this in the future, but right now they can't. I just wanted to throw that out there, so you knew.
I appreciate that because there were some security concerns in the beginning with Zoom, and they might still have issues. So they're coming out with different updates and all that. But I also have at the end of the presentation, the end of the slideshow that I email PDF format for you. It's a Microsoft Teams. That might be an alternative. It might be a little safer to use that one. It doesn't have the capabilities. I talked to our secretary, Veronica, and she was the one initially, the organization was using that, and she's not impressed by it. So it doesn't have the same functionality. It's got a lot of limitations to it, and you also have to buy into it as well too, where Zoom might have some functionality where it's free. If you want all functionality, you might have to subscribe, and that's what we do. So for us, we could do groups up to 49 people at one time. Not that we're going to do a class that big, but that's our limitation in the packet that we bought into. So I'm going to start sharing my screen, and the first screen that I'm going to share, actually, before I do that, let me kind of rearrange my landscape a little bit. So one thing that you're noticing as people are sharing their stuff, their screens, there are 2 main things that you have to worry about. One, you can share your screen. So if you have a dual display like I do, it's either going to be display 1 or display 2. So in my case, my external display, that's where I'm going to put all my stuff onto so that you get the gist of what I'm doing. So before class, I open up all my presentations that I want to be using, and I put them on the location where I want them. So the two ways of sharing the screen would be to share individual applications. So when you're sharing an individual application and then you want to show something else, you got to stop sharing, and then you got to go to the next screen and share the next screen or next application. So what I'm going to show you now, I put everything on the one screen where I'm going to be sharing from. So I don't have to go in and out, in and out. So I'm going to put it on the one screen, and that's what I'm going to show you. So I'm going to put us, all of us, into that screen so that I can walk you through the controls. And since I modified my settings, I need to adjust
Dave?
my screen size. Yeah, go ahead.
See, I should have had this the other way around. I should have had your version a little earlier in the week, and because I certainly could have used it. I was part of Dave's example of not doing it right. You know how we talked about how we talked about what he's showing you is a much better system than how I was approaching it. So awesome. That's why we're having this. Yeah, that's why we're having it.
We learn by doing it. That's, yeah.
Sure.
Absolutely. So I'm going to start sharing my screen, and then I'm going to share, like I said, the entire screen, and you're going to start with seeing your pretty faces on that screen that I'm going to share. So I'm going to find that screen. That's my number 2 screen. And then I'm going to start sharing, and I want to make sure that everybody can see it. Can you see yourselves? Can you wave to yourself? All right, so here's how it's going to work. So in the beginning, you see 2 different screens that I have up over here. So let me close. So if you, first of all, I want to direct you to the bottom of my screen. See my menu? Yours is probably going to look a little bit different, and I'm going to walk you through how to set it up so you have all the functionality available to you. So some of the things that you might or might not have on the bottom of your screen is polls. The other one that you might not have is, which in this format that I have, since I don't have any breakout sessions either, you would see that in here. So my menu was taken up because of the resolution. It blew everything so big that it pushed my breakout rooms out of the room. So the one thing that I want to direct you to, very simple, when you're trying to mute yourself, unmute yourself, I personally like to keep this window, the tile view, where you have all the participants on all the time. So that's how I could tell who's talking when somebody talks, when somebody's saying something, mute or unmute people. But this is the quickest way that I know of, other than the shortcut that Spencer showed you. I can unmute myself, and now you can hear me talking. So this is the quickest way. And then Doug was helping out somebody, and I appreciate that. On top of your picture too, because you go up to your picture, it's going to give you mute and unmute depending where you're at now. And then it's also going to give you a window. It's going to give you different options that you can do. So those are the important things that you want to learn. So once you click on the chat over here, I can open or close it. So you see the participants. The participant window that I have displayed, it gives you different options. If you go those little dots, it lets you see over here. And I lost I would have to shrink it down because of my resolution. That's where you will raise your hand and do other stuff in here, up in this corner, when you enable that. The second thing that I want to direct you to is the chat. This is one of the more useful things I think that you can do in Zoom. This little window on my right side, bottom right of my screen. So this is where I can type a message, and then you should be able to see it. But since my resolution's all screwed up, I don't want to start typing because I got to find all my stuff from one screen to the next one. So I'm going to keep it at that. So this is where you would type.
Hey, David.
If you wanted to type, yeah, go ahead, Spencer.
Just to point out, where at the bottom of your participant list where it says invite, mute all, unmute all, you have to be the host or a co-host to have those options. If you're looking at it on your screen at the bottom of the participants, you won't be able to mute or unmute all unless you're a host or a co-host.
And then on top of that, the host has a lot, like it goes by hierarchy. The host is on top, the co-host is over here. That could be any change when the meeting starts. So if you're the host, And if somebody else can't get all the functionality they need, is you go up to the participants and you can make that person a host, and that would make you a co-host after a meeting starts. So you have that functionality as well too. So we're going to go into the settings, the online setting, the event settings, that I'm going to show you how you can add a lot of that functionality at the bottom of that screen, and some of that, like Spencer said, a lot of that's you're going to see more windows. So this, I'm going to point you to a couple different things that you're going to have. So this over here, see that little file icon? The host would have to enable that when you create the meeting. So I think, who was it? Kevin, he was sharing files. Yeah, unless you set that up in the meeting ahead of time, you could not do that. Unless you set up polls ahead of time when you're setting up the meeting, you could not do that. Unless you set up breakout rooms, you could not do that. So once you do it, I believe it keeps it by default, but you cannot count on that with all the updates that Zoom does. So this is kind of the basic overview. So on top over here, you can also see different functionality on top of my screen. I don't know if you can see that because that is my personal screen. I have a screen that says you are sharing the screen, and I believe you can see it, right? The green line on top. Can you see
Yes.
that? Okay, so in there, those are my personal controls. So if I wanted to stop sharing the window, if I wanted to give have access to somebody else's system so I can help them out, I have that enabled in my settings. So I would have to set that up. If you want to annotate on the screen, this is one that I want to direct you to as well too. We had a class, and one of the students, and on our screen, the screen that you see, we could see scribbles, and then we didn't know what it was. And I started digging and digging and digging after the meeting. It turns out that you can set up your presentation where people can collaborate, and you can scribble on top of the same screen. This is where you can annotate, but you can turn it on and off when you're setting up your meeting. So that is something very useful, but it can also be something very disruptive, or it could be something that creates a problem if somebody is writing stuff they shouldn't be writing with that tool. So just keep that in mind. Does anybody have any questions about this window over here? I always like to have this enabled, and I'm going to show you how to make sure that this, I think Porky or somebody else said, I lost you guys, or I couldn't see you guys. And then Spencer said, go to the bottom of your screen. You should see the Windows logo or the toolbar at the bottom. Just click on the Zoom icon, and it's going to give you a couple different options depending on what you have open in Zoom. And then you click on that one, it should populate or bring up whatever you had hidden. So that is how you bring that up. But I'm going to show you how to set that up where that doesn't happen. By default, I believe that some updates go, and I don't know if they change that or not. But when somebody shares a screen, does it take over your whole screen that you're looking at? Can I get a yes or no? Most of you, when somebody starts sharing the screen, does it take up all your screen? And you can also change that. And I'm going to show you how to change that in settings as well too. So does anybody have any questions about this? Obviously, you got a lot of tools over here. So if you don't see these on your personal screen, just go to the bottom of your screen and click on those two options. So it's either going to be chat or participants. Over here, you can change your name. I can change your name, or Spencer can change your name. Changing the name, speaking of that, you have to allow that in the settings. You can set it up where students cannot change their own names, or you can allow them. It makes it practical when you have a bigger class, but it could also create problems when you have that same bigger class. So any questions on this? So let me try to get that out of the way. Now, they should have disappeared, right? So what are you looking at now? That's my browser, right?
Yes.
So this is one of the ways that this is the way I set it up. Ahead of time, I wanted to place the screen where I wanted in the windows, and now I'm just kind of peeling back the onion to get to the stuff that I want to reveal at that particular time. The one recommendation that I have is that, let's see, this screen over here. So in this particular screen over here, I definitely recommend that if you haven't done so, you download the app. For me, I run everything off of the app. The app can be installed on mobile device. It can install on a PC and a Mac and all that. I'll show you a couple different screenshots, but it does pretty much the same regardless. I would not recommend trying to run a meeting from a mobile device. A tablet's a little bit easier than the iPhone, but if you get used to one device, it makes it easier for you. if you get used to multiple devices, it makes it easier to troubleshoot when somebody's having issues, like connectivity issues and that kind of thing. So if anybody was looking at it as a mobile device, in order to go from one view to the next one, that you had at the top right corner that you have, where it says speaker view or tiles, you can click on that and change your view. On the mobile device, you swipe side to side, either left or right, or you might have to swipe up, swipe down. So you still have the same functionality. It's just a pain in the butt to try to run a meeting on a screen that is this size. It's almost impossible to do that. So this is the download center that they have. This is got different downloads. So one thing that I want to show is this over here. It's got plugins for Microsoft Outlook. So if you use Outlook at work, you can schedule a meeting directly from Outlook. I personally don't use that functionality. I'd much rather use the app or the website. And then also the add-ons, they make those. Can you see that what I'm pointing to, top right of my corner? That's an add-on, Zoom add-on for my browser. They make those for the browser as well too. So you can schedule directly from those once you actually install those those plugins. So I'm going down the list over here. So it's got browsers, and obviously I'm running Chrome, and I got a browser yet. I didn't see it over here. If you search for that, you find it. And then Intel Unite, and this is the useful ones. If you ever participate in meetings yourself, you can download the app. It's free, and then you log in one time and you get to go. So you can see for PC, for Mac, and all that. This is Windows, and then obviously more over here. Anybody have any questions about this particular resource? So this is where you would find the app. So let me move one of my tools over here. So close that out. And then I'm going to show you the settings. So this is how you set up when you log in. I'm showing you my login information. Obviously, it's got something locked out. So this is what I look at where I first log into my account. My profile, and then it's got your description, however you want to set it, and it's got all the pertinent information, where you're located at, and all the good stuff, and all that, password, and all those. And then we start going through the different options. So last night, in order to show you something, I went in, I was sitting at home at night, and I created a meeting. So obviously I don't want to try and start a meeting where it's going to kick me off at this meeting. So I created one meeting. I called it OSHA 502 test meeting. I'll show you a screenshot of the settings from the PowerPoint that I added. So in here, it's got different meetings that or the same meeting, different meetings that I've had as well too. So now if I go back, I need to minimize it a little bit so I can find the stuff without getting lost. So I'm not going to start it because I'm going to lose all my stuff, but I can actually edit it. And that I'm going to show you how to do that too, and how to create those. So next up on the left menu here tells you about a webinar, how to go about doing those. You can do those on Zoom. In here, you can set up to either record to the cloud when you do a meeting, whether manually, or you can do it automatically. So this stuff over here, if you do it automatically, it's pretty nice, because if you need records and all that, or if you need to have a makeup class later on, and then you're teaching another topic, you can assign that, because you have the same presentation that you did for somebody else. Now you can play it out for somebody else on a different date. So in here, it's showing me the meetings that I've done, that they're ready to view, and I've deleted a whole bunch. I also have some on my hard drive that I've recorded onto my hard drive. So over here, you can access those meetings from any device, wherever you're at. And then this is where I'm going to start talking about your settings. So I don't know if people actually have their account, but it might be useful if you wanted to follow along. I'm just going to scroll slowly down. This over here, I'm going to walk through the functionality. You have basic functions, and you also have advanced functions. So in the basic functionality, you find stuff like a waiting room. I don't know if you ever went to a Zoom or a meeting where you log in and you're just waiting. It's like a waiting area. Well, you would have to enable that. So you would click and turn it on over here. That means the students can log in, can go somewhere before you actually start that meeting. If I scroll down a little bit, you can customize the waiting room. Obviously, I don't have it on. Require a passcode when scheduling new meetings. I have that on, doesn't mean it's going to ask me for a passcode once I log into the app that I use on my PC or my iPad. I just click and start creating meetings because the password's already there. So in there, require passcode personal meeting. I don't have that on, require passcode. So this, to me, is not very useful when somebody's trying to connect via phone. And then on top of that, you got to punch in the code. So, but this would allow you to control who has access. If you ever watch in the news, people that get on the classes that shouldn't be on the classes, this is how you can turn that off, but it makes it a little more less practical to the people that actually should be there. So in case somebody shares that login information, you know exactly who it was, or they're not going to be able to do it in here. And then this is very useful, embed passcode, an invite link. So when you get the link from the FTI, I believe you have to click on it and you have to go register, right? Everybody has to register. So if you set it up that way, I'm going to scroll down. We're going to look at where you can turn that on. If you set it up that way, you can print a report. When you're done, it would actually show you who's coming on, when, and all that. So it actually documents when people are on, when people are off, when people are disconnected. That would be if they have to register. Then only authenticated users can join. I have that on. I don't want to create another step where the students got to download the app. They got to create an account and all that. The meeting that we do, you don't have to do that because of this. You can click on the link. You take the link. And then schedule a meeting. This is basically the settings when you log in. When you logged in today, in the past couple of days, if your video was on, it's because this switch was on when Nicole created the meeting. If the host person was on, it's because this switch was on. You turn it on or off. It's up to you, whatever works for you. Audio type. This one I'd recommend that you leave it like I have it, telephone and computer audio, because that's it's gonna give the flexibility to use one or the other one. Sometimes you see people in a meeting, you see somebody's face, they had issues with maybe with their sound, microphone and the computer, and they connect via phone. So you might have two. One, you might have a picture of the person in the video, but also down below, you might have somebody else's number, but not necessarily a name. That might be the audio and the video you're looking at through the camera. So I leave it as both, so it makes it more functional that way. And then this, you can grant, when you're creating your meeting, the ability for somebody to join the meeting before you start that meeting. You turn that on or off. I have it off. The meeting starts when I start the meeting, not when somebody else shows up. But this, I would make sure that you're going to be there on time. And then enable personal ID. This one you can set up your own, or they could be random. The difference would be, let's say you work for an organization and they have assigned IDs, whatever number that is, you can actually use your own, create your own, and they will tag that person to that ID. This one, let me ask you something. Were you muted automatically when you joined this meeting? If the answer is yes, this switch was on. If the answer is no, this switch was off. This is kind of useful. Always keep it on. Make sure it doesn't get too distracting as people are coming in. Then you can mute, or you can tell them specifically how to turn on the audio for themselves in that case. And then meeting reminder, you can modify different settings. They get those reminders. And then during the meeting, this is something that you don't necessarily want to concern yourself with. This, when you're talking about security, this might be more in the Job Corps where you need to encrypt and all that. But obviously, the software that has the issue, not just one step that you can do to make it better. And then I scroll down, I get back to, or down to chat. This one, you have to allow it. Obviously, we're all chatting over here, so Nicole was nice enough, and she said, yeah, I trust you guys. You can type. So you can turn it on, and you can also turn on and off private chats. So this would allow, the way it's set up right now for me, is that when I create a meeting, the participants can talk to one another, but you can turn that off, where all the communication would be to everybody, and everybody would see it. So you do have that flexibility. Auto saving, I also have that turned on. So I have mine set up to record the chat. That's going to be our records. So like I was saying before, first thing when we start the meeting, when we start a class, we tell everybody, type your name. And obviously coming from their device. We go to break, we come back, type your name again. we go to lunch, and then we come back, type your name again. So that way we have a record of them being present at all times, and we can see them on the screen. But just in case we missed them, we have the documentation that we have by doing this right here, this switch.
Dave, when you
Sound
save the
notification.
when you save the
Yeah, go ahead.
chat, does it just also save the private one? Can you see as the host the private chat that goes on
Yes.
between?
Yes, yes, you can see them. So in this case as well, notification when somebody joins or leaves, this one's going to be distracted to everybody. If everybody could hear it, I have it set up in my end to host and co-host only. I want to know when somebody leaves so I can look at my screen, see who's missing. I want to be aware who's doing what, and this allows me to have some control over that. File transfer. Remember that little guy that I showed you, that little icon at the bottom of the chat where Kevin was sharing the files? This is where you turn it on. You would have to turn it on unless they change that, but it was off in the beginning. It was off by default. So you would have to turn this on if you want to be able to give them a PDF, give them a document. If it's not turned on by you, then you're not going to have that functionality. Feedback I have turned off. I don't want to have any additional crap going to them, asking about the software and all that. So I turned those off. And then here, if you wanted to have a co-instructor, you have to turn this on. If you want to have that person have the same controls that you have or close to the same controls. Otherwise, that other person, the other instructor, is just going to be another participant. He's not going to have all the functionality that Zoom offers. So turn that on. The polling that we've been using, you have to turn it on. This is where you turn it on. When you're going to notice that if you're following along, if you're turning those on, as you start turning on stuff and you save that, you're going to see the menu at the bottom of your screen with the tile view. That's going to change. It's going to give you more buttons that you can click on. So polling, this one's very useful to me. This one by default, I believe it's off. But sometimes when I have a screen, I can't find my controls. They disappear. So I want them to be on top of my screen wherever I put them. Wherever I leave it, I want it to be there. So I turn this on. And then show windows during screen share. So I still want to be able to see everything. And then screen sharing, you have some controls over that. Who can do that? So we had activities, and then we might do one at the end of this segment. And then you have to report, share your screen. That's going to be one. Pick one person out of the group, just share your screen so that everybody can see something else other than this boring face that you're looking at right now. But in here, you can turn it on or off. Who can share that screen? It could be the host only or all participants. And then also, this is kind of useful too. This one, if you had somebody messing around, cutting other people off, putting other people off, this one, you can kick anybody off if you're the host. So if somebody was being disruptive, you can just turn off their screen sharing and all that. One thing that I found the hard way is that if you make changes in the middle of a Zoom presentation, it's not going to take effect until you start a new meeting.
Hey, Dave?
So you definitely want to do, yeah, go ahead.
Quick question on the sharing or the co-hosts. Yeah. Do they have to be registered as part of your group, or, who's available for that?
Great question. Yeah, great question,
Cool.
Kevin. So in order to make a co-host ahead of time, the answer is yes, but that's not your limitation. Once you actually start the meeting, you go to that in the participant list, you go to that person, and you click on that, you can make them a co-host. So we had that as somebody sent me, we're going to do a presentation for the whole organization. And I kept saying, man, I don't find you. He kept swearing I have an account. So I told him, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a meeting. And once we start a meeting, I'm going to make you a co-host. And that's a simple workaround. It's kind of a pain. But the answer when you're setting up the meeting, it's yes. You have to be part of the same organization. But that doesn't stop us from.
And if that co-host isn't turned on, then you can't add somebody as a host during the meeting either, right? Okay.
No.
So it's a good thing to have on all the time, just in case you want to throw somebody in.
Absolutely. Absolutely, especially if you're a trainer. If you're just a person having a meeting with your buddies because you can't get out because the state told you they can't get out, then it might be kind of like, you do. If you don't, you don't. Spencer, I see you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, I was just going to mention, if you have a situation where you as the host lose connectivity, right? Yes. your computer goes down,
Thank
the
you very much.
meeting will automatically, the software will automatically pick the co-host as the new host. So if you, it's always great if you have two people, teaching or overseeing, or, that you have that co-host turned on, because you never know when your system may go down, and then your otherwise it may just pick one of the students and make them the host.
Yes, great example. And I have actually an awesome example for that. We had a staff organization meeting, and I was a person running the control. So I was busy looking at the screen. I wasn't paying attention a whole lot to who was talking. And all of a sudden, I get put out of my screen because I had co-hosts. And I started hearing somebody just honestly pissed me off. And I was like, who the hell is doing this? So I look around, and it turned out that even though I was running the meeting, my BMST didn't tell us that he had invited GP Rig Maiden. And all of a sudden, he just decided to butt into a meeting. He's like, I'm looking at all my screens, like, who the hell is doing that and all that? And I saw Rig Maiden's face light up. He's like, oh, let me calm down a little bit. But yeah, exactly what Spence is talking about, because I did not see that somebody else had already seen who it was, and one of my co-hosts actually stopped sharing my screen. I was too busy doing something else that I didn't notice, and I was trying to fix it because something was breaking down. And it was a GP Rig Maiden that broke our meeting for like a couple minutes, and I couldn't figure out where the problem was. But thank you, Spence, because yeah, it is very true. It's kind of like the contingency, the backup. If you lose control, your computer freezes up, if your connectivity is not working that good, then you have somebody who can take over. So absolutely, great point, Spencer. Thank you. So going back to this whiteboard, if you have a tablet or if you have certain computers, they allow you to write, and they can turn that to text, and you can do that to PDF. You can turn that on when people can share that, can use that on the screen. Remote control. This is one where if somebody's having issues, you can take control and try to work them through. The one issue with that is that if you turn that off or you turn that on, somebody might turn off co-host. So we're gonna look at that. So sometimes you turn on the switch, it might turn something on the other side or off because of whatever reason it's on in the background. Meeting reactions, when we're talking about somebody being able to raise their hand when somebody asks a question, you turn it on right here. This one I can have also another story about that. We had that staff meeting that we had one lady, she was having audio issues, and she joined by computer and by audio. So I had a whole bunch of people on the phone. I couldn't figure out who it was, so I put one of them off. And then I get a text like, I can't get back on. And I remembered that I had set this to off. So this might be a security issue, but there might be legitimate cases where you kick somebody off that they can't get back on. And the only way that you're gonna go get them back on is by stopping the meeting, changing the setting, and then allowing them back in. So this is kind of like, depends on what you got, what you have to do. Allow participants to rename themselves. This could be useful if you take attendance. If all you see is a phone number, if you see somebody's phone or iPhone or something doesn't tell you anything about the name of that person, you can turn that on as well too. So that you can make the announcement, hey, make sure you type your name, make sure you do this, type in your name, click on your name on the users, participants, and then change your name. And then you can hide the picture of the people participating. This is the good stuff that you want to know for a trainer. This is the advanced setting. So I want to be able to report if somebody's having issues, so I left that on. This is absolutely where you turn on breakout rooms. If you don't have this on, it's not going to work. Everybody see that? So I would recommend that any trainer turn this on, and then allow hosts to assign participants to breakout rooms when scheduling. So when the meeting starts, you can start a breakout session, and the software knows, it splits them by however many groups you have, however many participants you have. But this way, you can do it ahead of time. One useful application of this would be if you have a different trade and you have an activity. So let's say they have tapers, I have painters, and I have glazers. If you know ahead of time their trade, you can break them out by groups. And when you break out into sessions, you've got nothing but glazers going in one group, nothing but painters, nothing but tapers in the other one. So this is where it lets you do that when you're scheduling the meeting. Closed captioning, I was talking about that yesterday a little bit with my intro to OSHA. You can turn that on, and you can have somebody do the typing for somebody else. So this, you can enable it. I don't see us using it. It will create a lot more problems because I cannot verify whatever somebody else is saying. Language interpretation, you also have that. And then fire and camera control, I have that off. And then this, we talked about this in the beginning. It could be, you could turn it on or off so that students can or cannot assign themselves virtual background. So I'll give you an example here. These are the default ones that came with software. I went online and just downloaded my own video, and I have another one in my folder with a beach setting. The waves keep coming and going. So if I turn that on, you would see the ocean behind me with the waves not stopping. I didn't want to use the default one, so I found myself one, and then just went. And when I was opening up Zoom, then I told it where to look. So this one could be disruptive too. I have it off, so you don't want any filters being used by your participants or your students. And then this one I have it off. We haven't had any issues. So if somebody doesn't belong to the account, if you're having that issue or potentially, you can turn that on. Auto answer in the group, enable users to see other contacts, other groups, and then you can turn it on. Only show default email address when sending invites. I have that off. I don't want to, whatever they give me, I type in, and that's what they get. So this one's kind of useful. If somebody has headphones, they might put those on when they're connecting. All of a sudden, you get text or you get chat saying, I can only get sound out of one ear. So stereo means 2 channels. That's where you turn it on. So I have that on because I want to be able to hear out of both ears, and I want the participants to do that as well too. So different stuff, and then also I have turned on where they don't have to download the app; they can just join by the browser. So if you turn that on, it gives them that functionality. And then this one, live streaming. So if I turn it on, you're going to see what happens. It's going to add Facebook Workplace by Facebook. So you can live cast this if you wanted to. I have no interest in that, but that might be something that's worth looking into for you. So Facebook Workplace, like Facebook and YouTube automatically send it up there. Right, so request permission to unmute, I can turn that on so that I can unmute somebody if they were muted. Email notification, when cloud recording, I have mine set up to record automatically. So when the recording is done, I get an email. You can turn that on or off. When attendees join a meeting before the host, have that on. When a meeting is canceled, the participants get, anybody that I add to the list, they got the invite from Zoom, automatically, they're automatically notified when I cancel my meeting if I have to do that. If you have a co-host, if you cancel the meeting, they would also notify the co-host automatically if you cancel the meeting. This could be a great thing, but it could also be a pain in the butt, and I'll tell you why. They're going to get notified not only when you create the meeting, but if you added the meeting and forgot something. So every time you make a change to the meeting, they're going to get another email. So most likely they're going to be calling you, what, did you change the meeting? Am I supposed to be in the meeting right now? So it confuses people. But it's kind of nice if you know what it does and how to set up that properly. So in my PowerPoint, you're going to see some screenshots that I took when we've been having this class, and the screenshots came out fine. Well, Apple, iOS, or has functionality to work with Zoom that you can actually have it where if somebody took a screenshot, it would blur out that screenshot. So if it was something sensitive that you're covering, you definitely want to turn this on. But it only works on iOS. That's the downside to it. And then invitation email, you can choose whatever language you want to do your meetings or invites. Schedule and privilege. So if you have somebody in the office that needs to schedule on your behalf, you can assign people to do that ahead of time. And then you have that. That's about the gist of all the settings and how you want to have your settings so that it works the way you need it to work. Anybody have any questions on any of that?
Yeah, when you share your screen, do you have to have that documents lever on?
Yes, open.
So you can't,
it's got to be open.
Like open a second window and share, and then
it could be minimized. So it could be at the bottom of your toolbar. So just open it up and click on that sideways bar, and that's open. It's just hidden, but you want to have it open, either on display or hidden. But you cannot
But it
pick
won't,
just anything that you wanna. Yeah, go
but it
ahead.
won't share the screen without that lever on.
No, with this is on the person that's setting up the meeting. So if you set this up ahead of time, yes, if you allow that, it's going to happen. If you have it off, then you can't do that. Participants cannot share the screen. Only the host, only you could share the screen.
Oh, okay.
So you
I
can
get
turn that on or off. So if you have it on, they would have to have the document up first, and then go find it, share screen, and then go find it and share it that way.
Okay.
Great question. Anybody else? All right, so I'm going to be closing windows as I'm going along because I don't want it to be in the way, because this toolbar over here is in my way and I don't want to move it because I like where it's at. So Kevin mentioned about linking to outside sources. A couple of issues with that. So this one's CSB, Chemical Safety Board, so it's legit, but you want to be careful on where you actually find your sources. So I just typed in CSB no escape. And I think most of us that have been training for a while, we know this case. So in this case, I found a video. So if I start playing my video and I forgot to do the sound, so I can remember, I'll make sure that I do it on the next one. But if I play it, I'll show you a little trick. I'm going to go, let's make sure that I can skip the ad. Skip that. This is one downside of sharing that. So as I'm doing this, and it's better that it doesn't play actually. There's no audio, so I can explain. So as I'm doing this, you can see the video. You can go ahead and watch it on YouTube, but copy the URL. If I copy the URL, now I have a nifty little app. It doesn't cost anything. It kind of like gives you some of the crap that you probably don't want to have. The one that I like using is one-click downloader. So after I copy that, see what happened on top over here? It automatically took my copy board and paste. So now if I click on download, it's going to find a better quality and it's going to give me an option. What do you want to do? So in this case, 360 is the best it can do. It gives me a couple different formats, and I click download, and it's going to download. So this is one of the drawbacks that you have a lot of. Obviously, it's free, but nothing in life is free. So somebody's got to pay somehow. Those people with that game that you saw, they're the ones paying for your download. So now, let me get out of YouTube. All right, so now I'm going to bring up my folder so that I can show you. I'm going to find that videos. Can everybody see that folder? Notice that I haven't stopped sharing because I had lined this up ahead of time. So right now, all my videos are going to be thrown in here, and you can see what some of the videos I already had. So depending on your connection, it might vary, but these are just now on your hard drive. Now you don't have to worry about linking to the outside. So going back to a couple of the issues, linking to outside.
Sorry, David.
The one that I use, one-click downloader.
Okay.
Yes, I have two that I use. This one's YouTube one-click, and I use another one as well. Yeah, YouTube downloader as well too. So I can, if you want specific information about any of the stuff that I talk about, just shoot me an email. You have my email address with that email that I sent with that outline last night. Just respond to that and tell me what you want, what you need, and then I'll make sure you get that. So that is pretty nice. That's how you bring in all your stuff, and that's how you embed the videos into your PowerPoint presentations. So that's on the back end. So now let's go ahead and see how do we use that, because now we're going to merge that. Does anybody have any questions? All right, so let me get that out of the way, and I go straight to my presentation. So that's why I like sharing my screen instead of sharing different apps, so that as I'm done with something, I can just keep on going. So I'm going to start my presentation. So here's a perfect example of something Kevin just talked about, embedding. So this picture over here, I embedded a link when I created the PowerPoint. After lunch, we're going to talk about how to do that. But I embedded a link. So I'm going to show you embedding the link and having the embedded video into the PowerPoint presentation. So when I open it, when I click on it, can you see the video? Yeah, it started playing on my screen, and that's why I left it on. See? That might be an issue. So you want to test drive that ahead of time, and you want to set it up the way you want to, so that when you're doing your meeting, you don't have that issue. So this is embedding a link. That's how it works. The app is going to probably start somewhere else, and then you have to drag it onto your main display. It might not be the optimal way of doing it. So the best next thing that you could do, or probably the best thing, is embedding the video itself. So now you saw how I bring down the videos that I want. So now I'm going to click you, show you a little preview of the video. See how it didn't go looking for it anywhere else? I put it directly in the PowerPoint. Pros and cons of doing this. This over here takes up a lot more memory. The previous one does not. The previous one is just a link. But the previous one, if you're linking to outside sources, it's going to link to somebody else's material. If they change that, if they take it down, then you have no access to it. So if you're planning on that to teach a class and you click on a link and the link doesn't show, then what? What's plan B? What's plan C? And all that. So that is the one nice thing about this, doing it this way. You don't have to worry about where it's at. It should pop up right onto your screen, but it's also going to make the files a lot bigger if you have a lot of video. And then going into video with OSHA, how long can a video be for training purposes? What's the maximum length in a video? Anybody?
25%.
No more than 25%.
More than
That's
25%.
correct. Thanks, Tim. Yeah. So it's got to be less than 25%. You don't want somebody else, a video teaching your class. So you have to be in control of at least 75% including activities and all that. So
Hey,
this,
Dave.
I kind of take some of the stuff that, yeah, go ahead.
When you're talking about videos and embedding them in a PowerPoint and running them from the PowerPoint during a PowerPoint presentation, one of the issues that I've tried to figure out is that Zoom will not share the, if you don't select before you start sharing your screen, if you don't select share computer sound and optimize for video at the bottom of
Yes.
that share dialog box, then when you get into your PowerPoint, you're going to have an issue. So how have you resolved that?
I'll show you when we go into the actually I have, if you can hold on to that question, Spence,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then I'll
sure.
show you a screenshot. I got a couple screenshots of that exactly.
Okay.
So this over here, it expands on what CPWR and Spencer has in place. Reliable, I put reliable, high speed, bandwidth, because sometimes you might start out with halfway decent internet, but halfway through, like Henry could attest to us, right, Henry? Somebody boots you off because they don't like you, and they say, yeah, it was your internet was low. But this is basically what the issue could be. The internet connection might not be that good. And then working webcam. So you definitely want to have that. Working audio, either the system, and then make sure you know how to troubleshoot that. So if I do this, so let me do something real quick, see if I can. Let's see, this is trouble with the resolution that I have right now. All right, so when we go back to this over here, if somebody's having audio issues, you need to know where to find all that information, right? If I click where to find all that. So if I click over here, it's gonna give me more information. And sometimes you might be able to chat or send them a message and all that. So you need to be familiar with this. If they're having camera issues, they might do this, but this is the one that I wanna bring up. So if I go, because I already have it open, but that's where you actually, if you go over here, see, I already have it open. So I hope it goes to the right place. So this is gonna go into my app, there we go. So now in here, the audio, I personally like having my headphones. So if, when you go into your settings with the app, this is why I like the app, makes it so functional. In here, I wanna make sure that I have the right device. So it's either the computers, external, internal, your headphones, and you wanna make sure that it works. And also, sometimes somebody, when they talk, they might be kind of dim. So you wanna crank this all the way up, or maybe crank it all the way down. So this is gonna affect what people hear. So this is a nice, this is how you troubleshoot somebody. But in the share screen over here, this is basically what I was telling you about. When you lose, when you get lost, when somebody's sharing the screen, most likely if the screen takes over everything, this is probably checked on your settings. Enter full screen mode when participant shares the screen. And then maximize Zoom window. So I have those off because I want to be able to have control. And by having those on, I lose stuff in the background. I don't want to have that. And then side-by-side mode, I have that. And then silent system notification when sharing desktop. So if I'm on the phone on this and somebody joins, somebody leaves, then my notifications are turned off, but my co-hosts are not. So this is part of what Spencer talked about. So this has got to be just, or the audio, it's got to be just right. And then we're going to get to the other screen where I'm going to show you what else is going to be there. So these are the basic controls that you have. So generally, these are your setting controls. So if I click on view more settings, it takes me to the browser, where we came from. So the main screen that you're going to get at this one when you join the meeting. So I'll show you right now. So if I click on this one, it's going to start a meeting right now. So if somebody says, oh, can you show me how to do this? Go to the app. If you have the app, click right here and you start the meeting. And then on the participants, you can invite them. You can invite other people. Turn that on, participant, and then start inviting people either by email or you already have their names over, you already invited them. But that's how you do it. And then in here, if you wanted to have a meeting that you don't want to start today, you can also start it from here. So if I click on here, it's going to give you all the prompts. So, and like I said before, the resolution of this thing is humongous. So I absolutely have no control over this because of this is Zoom. So it's my resolution. So when I on my normal resolution, yeah, I can see all my settings and all that. Does anybody have any questions about this? So let me get that out of the way. Let me get this window out of the way as well.
Are you sharing your desktop? Is that what you're sharing? When you did share the screen, you shared your desktop. Yeah.
Yes. So I have two screens. I have the main desktop, my system desktop, and I also have a secondary. So right now I'm looking at your pretty face, Spencer, on my personal, on the tablet that I have in front of me, the Surface. Okay. Yet when I'm showing this information over here, that's on my secondary screen. Okay. So yes, absolutely. So this is where the dual display comes in really, really super handy. If you have two displays, you can do a lot more. You become a lot more efficient at doing anything that you want to do. Right, so this is basically what I just showed you. So this is, if you look at the app, so the way you get to the settings, what I was just showing you, you go to the app and click on the little gear. It takes you right to the settings. This is the PC app. If you notice, the only difference from the Mac app is no different. The only difference is that my system has the dark mode settings. That's why it looks a different color, but if you compare them side by side, very close to the same thing. And then when you compare that to the iPad, it's not bad. The one where it starts getting smaller because of the real estate is the iPhone and Android. So this, I would not necessarily recommend that you run a meeting from because it's going to create some issues. So we just walked through here a lot of the settings that you can do in the place where I was just at. So you have those, more settings over here. So those are two settings from the PC and from the iPad. And then this is a link that if you wanted to click on it on the PDF document that I sent you on this particular slide, it's going to take you, if you have an account, it's going to ask you to log in so that you can change all the settings that we've been talking about. So you would find that on the email that I sent you. So this is an example of the invite after you create the meeting. So this is an option. This is what is going to be created. So you can email directly from here. But personally, I don't like that approach, and there's one simple reason. Henry, what was the problem? Why couldn't you join us first thing in the morning on Monday? What was the issue you were having?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
We can hear you.
I didn't get the right invite. I guess I was using the old one from the orientation, so I didn't get it. That in I guess operator error.
Okay, thank you very much. So now I'm going to make the reference. I'm not going to ask him to speak up, but Phil had kind of the same kind of related problem. I had the same issue where when I got that email, it actually buried that invite with my personal email. So I have my work email, yet I do have an account that I have in order to use my computer. I have to use my personal account, my Windows version and all that, my Word and all that, it's all logged into one, including Outlook. So when I got that invite, it got thrown into my personal email, and yet I'm not used to using that for anything with Outlook. So I was looking for it in my work email, and I couldn't find it. So you have to know where to go look for it and look for the other calendar, and it's buried in there. For that reason, I don't like sending invites from this app because it ties it to the email that they got. So I just copy the text over here. You can just copy the invitation, highlight the whole thing, and then send it to the people. What I do, I write my email, and I just paste it at the bottom of my slideshow. So we're at lunchtime. I have just a few minutes left. Kevin, you want a break? So we're used to the same timeline. I'm just going to finish this off, and it plays right into the next segment, which goes into PowerPoint. So some of the stuff we're seeing on the screen right now, it comes from PowerPoint. So it's kind of nice that it's structured this way, where we talk about the one thing, and this is what you have to do so you can put it and make it work for what we're doing right now. So
I think it's a great idea, Dave. If it works for you, let's do that. Sounds good.
So a half hour, back in a half hour, Kevin, then?
Yep. Back in a half an hour, and Dave will pick back up, and then he'll get into PowerPoint development also on the tail end of this. Thanks. You guys
go ahead and go for lunch.
Yep.
Thank you.
So I can keep on going. So right now when I go to that, now Spencer, I look at my screen, I see screen 1, screen 2, and then all the other apps that I have there in my own screen. So once I actually pick a screen, it's going to show you what I'm seeing, and you're going to be impressed with what's on my screen right now.
Very nice. I like that.
I get some brownie points for that, don't I?
I'm not sure. That's pretty scary.
Extra credit, huh?
So,
okay. So
one of the things that
that
I've tried to learn is, and I'm sure you're going to mention this, is trying to develop the habit of looking into the camera rather than looking at your picture.
Yes.
Because people can.
If you had an external camera, you could do that, put it wherever you want. Absolutely. So this kind of gets away from that a little bit. That's why I have it set up one on top of the other one, so at least they're in line. Because I have the same setup at home. So when I work at home, it's the same exact setup that I have here: extended desktop, big screen, and then the smaller at the bottom. I love it. I can't say enough about having multiple displays. It makes you a lot more efficient.
Nice.
All right, so do we have everybody back by now? I think, right?
Yes.
Everybody back?
We're good to go.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. All right, so does anybody have any questions up to this point? Anything they want on top of your head, or maybe I haven't covered yet? Because we still have a couple slides, and then we're going to switch gears and go into PowerPoint. I just wanted to show you. Can you see the screen? Are you back in the PowerPoint? Can you see my screen? I think you should be able to, right? All right, so in there, you can see the window. Now that I changed my settings in order for you to be able to read everything that I show you, lower resolution, this is exactly the one window I can see, the one on my right. After you create a meeting, you create it from here if you want to have it scheduled. If you want to start a meeting right now, you go right at that icon, and it's going to take you, it's going to start that meeting, and then you can start inviting people from there. But here is the meeting after you create it, when you go in and look at it. So the one that I was showing you on the web browser, it's the same one that I'm looking at right now. So in there, it gives you can set if it's going to be recurring, if it's a one-time deal, or if it's going to happen for a week, like this class, 5 days, you can set it up in the controls in there. One-time deal, 5 times, 4 hours at a time, whatever you want to do. So it gives you flexibility, and it gives you some controls, but nowhere near what I showed you in the browser. So this is basically through the app. Once you actually go into the meetings, so if I clicked on meetings up here, and then I clicked on the one meeting, obviously this is not the app, this is my PowerPoint, so I can click on it. So if I clicked on this one and then I clicked on that particular meeting, this is exactly what I would see if I go to edit it. Does anybody have any questions about this? All right, so this one, you can join, like I said before, that's a scary picture up there. You can join with the browser or with the app. So this is, I'm just showing you, I just created a meeting. I had nobody else on it, but I was going in there and it's asking you, you want to join by phone call, or by computer audio. So if somebody was connected on a web browser, this is exactly what they would see. It might change a little bit depending on the browser they're using. This is Chrome, by the way, and this is what it looks like on Chrome. So this one, I took a screenshot. I walk you through. Anybody have any questions? So if you were following along when I was showing you the advanced settings, now you should have some more icons at the bottom, in particular polls, and then you should also have breakout rooms if you enable that. So if not, when you create your own meetings, if you save those settings, when you create your own meetings, you're going to see those different additional icons at the bottom. So going to the second part of Spencer's question, when he asked about sharing, screen sharing, I mentioned they might be in the settings, sound settings, that somebody's having issues with, that's why they can't hear the sound. So if you have some people that can hear the sound and just the one, or some people that can't hear it, you might want to go into the settings of the app, and then you want to adjust if they're using the system speakers or if they're using headphones. But when you go to share a screen, and this is what we've been forgetting to do, some of us, especially me, I was messing around with this, so I would turn them off, and then I forgot to turn back on, so I show you, but it actually worked out perfect, so I can talk over the video. So this is, when you go to share the screen, this is the screen that you get. So Spencer, when you were asking about how do I share, or what do I share, this is exactly, so right now, I would be sharing my second screen and anything that's on it. So obviously you can minimize those apps, but when you go back and open them again from the bottom of your toolbar, the system toolbars, then it would go back up to the screen where you need them. So this is what it will look like. So for anybody that does a meeting, if you have to share a screen, this is basically where you're going to enable the stuff that Spencer has been kindly reminding us. You have to check that box, and you have to check this box right here. This allows you to share the computer sound. So what Spencer said, the difference between sharing the sound through your speakers and a separate microphone, or having just play straight out from the computer, is right here. This is where you enable it. So up here, the one thing that I want to direct you to is this is basic settings. If you click on advanced, this is where you're going to find. This could be useful portion of the screen. So let's say that you're doing a class online, or you're doing over blueprints or something. You open up the blueprint on the screen, just like I did ahead of time. And then when you're in the class and you go to share the screen, if you got audio, don't forget to check that. But if you click on this, you can create, it's going to put a box on the top of the screen that you're sharing. You can make it as small or as big as you want that box. If you make it small, that box is going to reflect on the screen of the participants. So it's going to blow up. So the smaller you make it on your side and your end, the more it's going to blow up. So it would be ideal for somebody showing blueprints. If I show that, I could move that box around. It would highlight, the participant would only see that. So sometimes when you see us webinars, you see they're moving, they're showing you part of that screen. This is what allows you to do that portion of the screen. But you want to play around with that. So when you go to share your screen, don't forget to look at the top for that basic. Let me back up. For that basic setup, and then the advanced, this is basic. This is what you would see in the basic. Anything they have open, you would have access to, and then this one. So if you had a second camera, you can also share that camera. So if you were showing a job site, or if you're doing training, a hands-on training, I know Adolf's talked about the students being able to train remotely, and the students see him or see somebody working. This would be a useful setup if you have two cameras. Now when you go back, stop sharing. When you go back to share the screen again, just don't go into that, and then just share the basic. When you go back to this screen, just pick whatever you want to share at that point, and it does away with the secondary camera. Then sharing screens, this is what it looks like. Obviously, you've been seeing that with the app. And then polling, you saw what it looks like. I also had a video clip that, in case somebody hasn't seen it, this is embedded video, by the way. This is breakout rooms. We've also seen that. So if I clicked on the video, this video is also embedded, it would play. So I don't have the audio enabled again, because I just shared without the audio, because I don't need the audio. And then this is, so if I had two different displays, you might have one that sees something, and then the other one that sees something totally different. You set them up. The tricky part about this is that you got to set up the displays, first of all, the way you want them. And then it's hard to say, well, you got to have this and that. It's just different people like different things, different setup. If you have dual displays, this is a nifty little shortcut. I use this all the time. So do me a favor, everybody do this right now. If you're not on a computer, look at your keyboard, look for the Windows key. Press the Windows key and P at the same time, and what happens? Windows and P. On the right side of your screen or left side or somewhere, depending on where your setup is, you should see the window like I have up here, right? Something that looks like this. So if you had multiple displays, that's what you pick. So personally, can anybody explain to me what the difference between duplicate or mirror displays and extended displays? Anybody know? If I could have anybody. Yeah, what is it, Spence?
Well, duplicate is, say, for example, if you're doing a PowerPoint presentation and you want to show through the projector exactly what you're seeing on your screen, on your laptop or computer, it duplicates it, it mirrors it, or it clones it. They used to call it cloning. Extending means you have two separate displays. What you see on your computer is different than the second screen.
Thank you, Spencer. So absolutely. So some of the things that apply to that. So if you have duplicate, everything you click on, you're going to see on both screens. It's the same, so you don't have to do anything. The one thing it takes a little getting used to with extended is that when you open up an app, it might be on the wrong screen. So all you got to do is click on the header band of that app and drag it onto the screen that you want to have it at. After you open it initially in that window, when you close it and open it back up, it should go back to the same window where you put it at, because the computer knows that's where you want it. So this is a neat little trick that I use all the time, especially when I'm teaching. Somebody else uses a computer, I always leave it on duplicate because it makes it easier for other people. But for me, I want to have extended because I want to have the additional real estate so I can see more stuff or different stuff. So if you wanted to, on that handout that I emailed out, play around with your own settings, just click on that, open it up on your computer, click on that link on this slide that you have, and it should take you to the event settings. Additional services, just to finish it off, Google Classroom has some, so I put some resources in this same spreadsheet or same that outline that I sent you. So if you wanted to find out a little more about Google Classroom, a couple things about Google Classroom, you might have to register or you might have to have it .edu to be recognized as school, so that might make it kind of tricky. If you already have that, then it should be no issue where you get use whatever the kids use for school, when they assign the homework, the teacher talks. What's nice about this is it talks to almost any of the other apps. So if you know how to use Google Docs already, this plays right into that. So this is a link. And then to Ken, when he was talking about Job Corps probably already has a PC. That PC probably already runs on Windows. So Microsoft's already got a foot in the door. So along with that, this Microsoft Teams app or service plays right into that model as well too. They do have some kind of stuff that we've been talking about. It's not all the functionality, so you would have to learn this a little bit, but there is that option as well too.
David, if I'm not
yeah, go ahead, David.
Sorry about that. I should have raised my hand. I'm sorry.
That's right.
Also on the home page at the bottom where you're setting up your meetings and everything, there's a lot of tutorials and training at the bottom as well too. You can get a lot of this stuff.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for that. So does anybody have any questions about any of this stuff? So obviously the Teams works with, yeah, go ahead, Deb.
I was just saying that when you're sharing a screen and then everybody's picture is on the right-hand side, there is a little bar there that I found that will make your shared screen bigger, and it will limit it how many people I can see. So if you have
So let's try this. Let me walk me through, Deb. I don't know anything about this.
Okay, so on the screen, your shared screen is on the left and everybody's picture is on the right. In between those two, there's two double bars. If you click on that and drag it right.
So kind of like this.
Yes.
Kind of like this. So when you have multiple screens, thank you for that. So yeah, if they're kind of small, so if you're only seeing a portion of the group and you're seeing some of the stuff that you don't want to see, just find that little spot where you see those double pointed arrows, click on, hold it, and then drag it where you want.
And then on the left, where you're showing your presentation, I can make that whole screen very large. And I can take away the chat box, and then I see less people, but I can see your PowerPoint without you increasing it.
Yes.
So it works really well because I have a
Oh,
screen
let's
that's, I have a television screen that I'm looking at with all the
Like that?
pictures. Yeah. So I can make
So
it
for
on,
me, this is what you probably, yeah, this is probably what you have.
on
But
my,
as the as
right.
a host or co-host, yeah,
But
as a host or a co-host, I want to be able to have some of the controls. So if you add them, like you're a participant, you're absolutely right, Deb. Just keep an eye. If you're doing this, if you have this set up, just keep an eye on this little guy because he's going to give you a number, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's the chat conversation that's going on. For me, I want to be able to see that who's saying what and all that, so I could kick people out. Like Spence said day one, I want to be mean like Spence. So I want to be able to see who's saying what. So Phil has got a request over here. Being nice. Anybody agree with Phil? Can everybody see what Phil's saying over here?
Mm-mm. What's Phil saying?
He's asking, he's wondering if we can start over again. No, we're out of time, Phil. Sorry about that.
Dave, one other
So
thing.
anybody have? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
Yeah, you know when you had said that we do the second camera and stuff. One thing that I like to tell my students is that when we're doing it, you can pin video and that'll expand and actually get to see the what I'm trying to show them a lot better, rather than just having me on the screen. If they just hit your picture, whoever's presenting, and they video point you, that'll really expand. And that's real helpful, like when I'm doing the miniature scaffolds or detailed blueprints or something like that, that it really expands them real quick. And that's just real quick too.
awesome. Thank you. And the other thing too with that, Adolf, if you have a class where you have to show multiple steps or different things that you're doing, don't be afraid to record those, pre-record those. If you have those clips, you can share a clip. It looks like you're working, right? As long as you're wearing the same clothes or different clothes, whatever. So instead of you setting up, it's going to take you an hour and then clean up another hour and have that in between, you can cut the dead time and plan that ahead of time and just share that video clip that you have.
Correct. The only thing I like to do
Appreciate
it
that.
live, because I like to do it live for the presentation, and because they kind of direct me how to assemble the scaffold or whatnot. Yeah, I like that idea as well. This way, they're right there telling me what to do and how to set it up and whatnot, what's wrong, at real time.
I agree with that. All right, so let me stop sharing this screen and we're going to just touch on PowerPoint. So PowerPoint, I'm going to ask a couple questions and we're just going to go with what the consensus is as far as your experience level. So let me move that screen out of the way, out of my main screen. And I'm going to find my PowerPoint that I want to go into. I'm just going to close all the stuff that I had open in the background because I don't need it anymore.
Hey, Dave.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, if I could just share one situation that has caused me problems when in the past. Whenever I'm in extended screen, a lot of, how you'll left click on like Windows Media Player and drag it over to the right so it'll display on a projector.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
If you close it out on the projector side and your projector isn't on and you turn your computer on and you hit a movie, you're not going to know where it's at. You're going to hear it and everything else, but it's still going to be in that extended screen. And it could cause you a lot of grief and some time trying to figure out what the heck's going on if you don't know that. But make sure you drag it back from the extended screen onto your regular screen before you close it. It can save you some headaches.
Absolutely.
You're welcome.
Absolutely. And I agree with that. That's why the little trick that I showed you too with that Windows B, if you ever turn on your computer, like Kevin said, if you can't see all of your stuff that you had in there, try that Windows B and then go to duplicate or mirror displays, and you're going to see everything come back.
That's awesome.
But absolutely.
Awesome,
Thank you,
Tim.
Kevin. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so let's see over here. I haven't done any animation yet. This thing started going crazy on me without me doing anything. So, all right, so let's see. I don't have anything, so let's go ahead and try this again. Yeah, I don't have any animation, so I don't know why it's just doing this. So let's. Oh, you know what? I know why, because of CPWR. I created this from a slideshow, and I took, so here, so let me share the screen. Actually, first find all of you, like some of you guys have said. Let me, bear with me a minute. So I gotta hide all the crap that I have displayed. All right, here we go. All right, so I'm gonna share the second screen. And you should be able to see what I'm seeing, right, PowerPoint? Can everybody see it?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, so what I had in here, basically I went and just, the way I learn personally is by breaking stuff. I wanna take it apart, see how it works. And this is, like I was saying a couple days ago or yesterday, this is where I picked up a lot of stuff that I know by taking apart. And there's no better place than some of that Smart Mark material that they have, those PowerPoints. So I took one of them and I added my slides. Unfortunately, what that is, it had animation in the template. So I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go up here. Let me get that bar out of the way. So you can't see my control bar anymore, right? Did you lose it? Right? Took it out of that screen so that I can see all my slides over here. So if I go, and I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. So I'm going to show, if I go on view, okay, and then if I go on slide master over here, this is the background. This is where you build your templates. This is where you put your logos. This is what you do, what you want to do. So built. So I'm going to show you something. So I'm just going to open up my browser again, and I'm going to go to my home website. And I'm just going to click on that logo, and I'm going to copy that image, and then I'm going to minimize that again. So once I get back up here, anything you do to the structure is set up that anything you do to the top, it applies to everything below it. So what I did by copying that logo, now I can come in into this slide, and then I'm just going to do Control V, and it puts the logo on that slide. So I'm just going to place it, make it whatever size I want. So there's a reason why I'm going through this, so that it plays into what just happened. So if I put my logo up there, now if I scroll down, even though I only put it under one logo, what happens when I go through all the other logos? Obviously the other slides have everything in there as well too. So now if I go back to my main slide, so I'm going to close out of the slide master view. And now guess what happens to all my slides? So if I scroll all the way down, except that the ones that they don't have anything, why is it that I can't see my logos? Is because they got sneaky, they got tricky, and they started putting stuff on top of that. So there's other stuff that is on top of my slide, on this particular slide, on top of my logo. So one quick way to undo the stuff that you do, Control Z. So I'm going to hit it once, you're going to see undo once. I'm going to hit it again, undo again, until it goes back to the stuff where I had it. So instead of dragging it, try to line it up, I just undo the stuff that I just did. But in here, when I go back into the view, well, actually, let me go lower so you can see more of the slides, where you're going to see the logo kind of hidden because there are graphics in front of it. I can set it up where my logo comes in the front of it. I can set it up where the behind it would. I can change that, but that's not what I'm doing today. So I'm going to go back on my view and then slide master view over here. And the reason why I'm seeing the animation of my slides is because when I find that slide that is blank, the one that I picked, wherever that is, it's already got built-in animation. It's probably this guy over here. So if you go on animation, this is where you want to do. So it's, if I go on my first one, it's got animation built into it. I can undo it, but that's the reason why it went forward that fast. So the way I'm going to get past all of that, so let me close that out because this is a little more complicated. Most people are probably not going to use this a whole lot. So slide master over here. So one thing that I want to show you too, one thing that you want to get used to with PowerPoint, sometimes you might not have menus. So I don't know if you can see on top, I don't have anything that says picture on it. You get used to clicking a lot. So if I double click, see what happens when I click out. See what happens over here. Keep an eye over here. What happens when I click on my picture? What happens when I double click? Now I can edit this picture. So don't get frustrated. So sometimes you're looking for transparency. It might go in the middle of your page. So you put it where you want to, and you say, well, I don't want it to see the whole thing. So now you go into transparency, or you can do whatever you want, and you can adjust that whichever way you want to. So this kind of allows you to build your tools. So if I do this in the slide master, and then when I close out of it, I don't have to worry about people messing up my slide. Because when I have a slide, when I create a slide, I cannot click on that logo at all because it's behind. It's on my template. So a lot of times it could be a picture of a scaffold that you're doing this because you need to type on top of it. And then you need all the documents to have the same graphic or same information. So that's whatever you want to do with it. So another trick that I use for everything is another shortcut. So I'm going to do Windows on your keyboard. So if you want to try it too, so you're looking for Windows, Shift, and the letter S. Tell me what happens when you do that. So I'm going to try and do it on the screen. I don't know if it's going to reflect. So I just did it. Did the screen get dark on you or no? So now I'm going to go up to my screen and I'm going to highlight just part of that. You see what I'm highlighting? All right, so now if you see in my bottom window here, what I did by highlighting that after I punch in, again, wrong window. What I did by that, I just copied and pasted. So let me get out of this slide and go to some slide that has more real estate. So I'm gonna go back out over here and then I'm gonna click anywhere, actually. And then I'm gonna just hit paste. See what happens over here? So this is useful when you're looking for resources where you can't find the download button or the print button. Those key commands, Windows, Shift, S, and then you click and drag what you want to copy. And it turns this into a JPEG. And then you can save it as a JPEG. So this is how you start making your own training resources. So I didn't have any particular picture with this, but if I was looking for respirator, I just took it off of that PowerPoint. So this image came from, let me find that slide where I copied it from, right here. So that is how you start getting a lot of your resources. Once again, Windows, Shift, and S, that allows you to copy a specific part. So the other nifty little tool, if you want to copy a whole window in your computer, you have what's called a snipping tool. So that when you open it, it looks like this. So on the bottom, if you have a search window at the bottom left, type in snipping tool, and it's going to open this thing up. So when I click on new, look at what happens when I'm going to click on my screen that I have open. Obviously, it's not going to copy itself, but I'm going to copy on the screen where everybody's in. So now it just copied that, and now let me drag the window onto your screen. Because now I'm working with. It's that one behind. But anyways, that copies the entire window if you need to copy entire windows. So the snipping tool, it's great for copying entire windows. And then if you're copying just part of it, then it's going to be, let's see. Get my tools back up for it.
Dave, where is the Windows? I still can't. Where the Windows?
The windows that click on your toolbar.
Oh,
it's on my row. It's at the bottom of my keyboard. So if you look at your keyboard, probably close to your left, bottom left, there's got to be a Windows icon with the Windows logo on it.
Yep. Okay.
That's what you're looking for.
Okay.
That's what you're looking for. So when I'm saying Windows Shift S, you got to press those simultaneously. So when you're doing shortcuts, so the other one that I talked about, the Windows D, it's just at the same time. So that little window or that little keyboard can do a lot of things for you. So as we're looking at it, PowerPoint, so we don't have a whole lot of, let's see, right? Actually we have a half hour. So when I click on this slide over here, I'm gonna go into slideshow. So we can see this slide, see what's in it, see how it's gonna behave. So this is basically when you click on it, it's obviously this is what you see. When I click on the next one, You see that one come up first. Then you have some text coming up over here. You can change the animation, the order, and then you can you control that on when you animate. I just want to find one where it's got a lot more graphics. So we can go backwards and look at how they built it. So that one's got images, some text. I know they had one. Some of the older presentations used to be more complex, where they built stuff on top of stuff on top of stuff, where they had 20 different layers on the one slide. So if I go back, so that one just has a picture. Okay, so the graphics there you're seeing. So let's go ahead and get out of this one, because this is a simple one. So how do they build this one? So if you start clicking around, like I said, get used to clicking, and you're gonna find out what's hidden. So if I wanna click on that oval, and I click on it, and I move it, but I wanted to edit the text is in front. But if I wasn't clicking exactly on the box, the one thing you might want to look at is how is it layered, what's behind what. You can change that. So I'll just show you. I'm going to go into text. I'm going to highlight that bounding box. You need to click on the box, not inside of it. And then I'm going to right click on my mouse, and you get a new window. So now that box that I clicked on is sitting in front of something else. So I'm going to click to send it back. So when you go to the right over here, it gives you two different menus: send to the back or send backwards. So it's going to send it one layer, or it's going to send it all the way back. So I'm going to send it all the way back. So see how it dimmed? Because now it's hidden. So now if I try to access that text, I can't unless I move that graphic in front of it. So sometimes when you're clicking around, click on that thing, get it out of the way, you might be able to get to what's behind it. So in my case, I don't want to change any of that. So Control Z again, once. So it's undoing every step that I did until I get it all the way back to normal. So same thing with this over here. So you put it in an oval, and the oval happens to be in front of something else. You might not see the picture that you want to see. It kind of gets in the way, kind of blocks. So just go ahead and click on either this one or that one and send one to the back. Since this one's in front of everything, I want this graphic to be behind everything, because I want to be able to edit the text behind it, and I want to be able to move that picture around. I just click on that picture. I'm going to send it to the back. And now I'm back to normal. So about once again, if you pay attention over here, now since I'm clicked on something that is either picture or graphic, it gives me an option to shape the format that object that is highlighted. So if I click, this is the fill button, this is the outline or bounding box. So if I click on this over here, I can see what color selected. So I can change that color if I wanted to. And then I can change the transparency as well too on it. So if I click on it, go into it, you can also start going into it and change the percentage of transparencies. So with this is very, very useful, because you can make a lot of stuff. You can work with a lot of graphics. So I'm just going to put in insert, and I want to do just one slide, whatever type of slide I get. So let's say that you were looking for a wet paint sign. So I'm just going to go to my draw, and then you have different options over here. So if you had a tablet, you can draw by touch, or you can insert. If you go by insert, this draw, if you have a tablet that you can write on it, this is useful if you want to draw your own graphics, or if you want to create something that's already in there. So if I go in and then this, the resolution kind of screws everything up because it hides my images. There we go. So in my menus, so I'm going to do shapes in this case. So if I wanted to do what paint sign, so obviously you wouldn't necessarily have another background on it, but you just click on, if you wanted a perfect square, how can I make a perfect square? Anybody know the shortcut? Because sometimes you're making a, so I'm going to click again, so insert, and then I'm going to go on illustration, shapes, and then I want to make a perfect circle. So I'm going to find the ellipse tool, the oval. So if I click and drag it, as I'm dragging it, it's changing, it's distorting a little bit. So you might have a hard time making it perfect. So if you want a perfect circle, anybody know the shortcut? Anybody know how to do it? It works on any shape that you make. And so I'm going to go back over here. I'm going to go back to my illustrations, and I'm going to click on the same circle. So now I'm going to hold my shift key on my keyboard. Now I'm going to click and I'm going to drag. See what's happening automatically? It keeps the same proportions. It works on any figure. So if I go in on insert and the illustration, so once again, so let's say they wanted to do a stop sign. So I'm going to do the octagon. I'm going to do that. So obviously it's the wrong color, but now I have my menu up here. I just do red, and I'm just going to go inside, and I'm just going to add text or edit text so they could put a blinker in there. I'm going to go to my home screen. I want that in the middle. And then obviously that's not going to be big enough. So I'm going to find something and then I can edit it later on. So I'm going to go start with 36. I want white text so that I can see it. So now if I write down, it's kind of small. So it doesn't work with what I need it to do. So this over here, I can make it bold. That's going to grow a little bit. And then you can just keep on increasing the size. So as you're going over, you can see when you get to the size that you need. So a little too big right there, we're fine. So the one issue that you have by doing it this way is if I try to move it, it moves the whole thing. So this is the way you would center it. Hit enter, put that behind, and then you can play around with the size of that space up there. So you find the one spot. That seems to be about it. So now you have your stop sign. So if you want to give it some depth, you click on that box over here, and then the sign. This is so hard because it hides all my menus. And then you can put shadows and you can do all of that. So these are kind of like above and beyond what normal people would do. So here's what, this is the one neat thing about this too, is that when you go, let me go back. You have different tabs up here. So I'm just gonna click on one so it reveals everything that's up there. So obviously the resolution of my screen is big so you can read it. So you have, for every one of those boxes, you have more menus. And then when I go through that, those are kind of like tabs. It gives me a different option, activates different functionality. But when you go to the file, this is where you control how you save something, the properties, whose name is it, who created a document, and all that. In here, when you go to save, you can save, and it's going to save the presentation you're working on, or you can go and save as. So I'm just going to show you what save as does. So when I go over here, so even though I'm just looking at a PowerPoint, when you look at this, is a PowerPoint, it's a file that you can edit. If you click on the arrow over here, it gives you tons of different options. You can save that PowerPoint as a PDF. You can save it as a PowerPoint template, which is if it's something that you use a lot, save it as a template so that you don't forget to save it, and then you change the one document, like what Kevin was talking about. If you save it as a template, before you close that new document, it would ask you for a name. Otherwise, he's going to delete it, but he's not going to modify the original file. This works on Excel, Word, and PowerPoint. So you can save it in any format you want, and you can put it wherever you want as well. But in there too, so you can change the format. That's what I wanted to show you. But in there, you can also, what's that, Ken?
That wasn't me.
Oh, I did see the box light up because I was looking at the other screen. Sorry about that, Ken. So what was that? Somebody had a question or comment?
I believe it may have been Deborah.
No, actually, it sounded kind of mentally. It might have been you, Phil. So here's the other thing on this box. If you look down here, you can share and then you can export. Yeah, go ahead, Deb.
I was just me. Yeah.
Okay, so here's those two options I want to show you on share with other people directly. So, or you can save it to the cloud. If you have a Microsoft 365 account, you should have some OneDrive space. So you can put it up there, you can collaborate with other people. This is where you do that. You could send it over PDF for sure, making comments on it. But this one over here, this is pretty neat. Let's say they create, anybody do kind of like, what do they call those, career fairs, where you want to have maybe a TV that's looping. and you want to create a video, you can set the PowerPoint to loop. Once you go into slideshow, you have that option. But also, if you have animation, especially if you have transitions in between slides, if you export it, you can export this PowerPoint as a video, animated GIF, or you can put it on a CD. This kind of wraps it up if you have animation so it plays anywhere. So this would be something that people click, they wouldn't see the file, they would just go into a slideshow. So don't forget about this stuff over here. And then if you go into info, if you go back, once again, I'm on PowerPoint, go into file, and then you go down into info, it's going to tell you what version of PowerPoint you have. Actually, the version is down below, but it's going to tell you who created the document, what the name of the document. If you want to add tags to it, you can a different department, a different category, maybe health and safety, or whatever you want to name it. This is where you save all of those. This is where the metadata comes from. You can edit that as well too, and copy, share from here as well too. And then in this particular case, more gives you options. What you can when you have the menus on top, you can this is where you find the stuff that you're missing that you can't find anywhere. Go in here. But if you go into account, you can see what version you're having, what version you're having of that PowerPoint presentation. Anybody have any questions up to this point? Let me check my text. Somebody's texting me. All right. All right. So anybody have any questions about PowerPoint? So let me ask you, who has a little bit of experience, maybe not much experience with PowerPoint? What about some experience, intermediate? Who's got a lot of experience in PowerPoint? Who's got a lot of experience in PowerPoint? I see Ken. Anybody else? A lot of experience? Deb, you're pretty good at it. Cool. So PowerPoint, don't be afraid of it. And also, the one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that PowerPoint, so I'm going to create something new, get out of this PowerPoint. So I'm going to create a new.
David, just to add what you're doing that, I just think the most important thing, and you brought it up, is whenever you get a PowerPoint from somebody, even if they say, well, this is a SmartMark PowerPoint, and so you're thinking it's just a regular SmartMark, they can change things around it, put all kinds of, you know, animations and all that other stuff in there. You got to check your PowerPoints if you're getting it from somebody before you present with it.
The one thing they would recommend, thanks, absolutely, Ken. The one thing that I want to recommend is that you do modify it, make sure it's from reputable sources and all that. I modify them all the time, especially when it comes down to statistics and all that. So when I do my ICRA tomorrow, the PowerPoint, I went yesterday, I believe. I was looking, actually the day before yesterday, I was looking for the numbers, fatalities for the COVID-19 fatalities and infections. I have the current rate, so that's a perfect example. When OSHA comes up with new fine amounts and all that, that's another example where you might want to update that information.
And just
when I go to create new, go ahead.
One other thing, David, I just want to so like my company computer and all that stuff, we cannot use flash drives. So flash drives, none of that stuff, we can't use it. Its security is blocked at. I know that it's going to get stronger and stronger for others. So remember, if you think that you're walking in someplace and you can use that flash drive that you got your material on, you need to make sure you might need to email it to yourself or something to have it on a different type of program. So.
Yes, thank you, Ken. And then also, if you have the file, you think you can use some other computer, it can look the same. It might look totally different too when you open it because it might be a different version of that software they're using. Kevin, you got a comment or question?
Yeah, I was just going to say thanks, Ken. That's an awesome reminder. Yep. It's always, whenever we go off site at all, it is always nice to be able to check out the room you're going to teach in and the equipment ahead of time. It's like versus going in first thing in the morning up at the International and trying to unbox. If you get in there Sunday evening, always a much nicer situation to get everything checked. And there's a classic example. Also, a lot of these different systems now do not have CD players, and some don't have DVD players, so that's something else to keep in mind.
Another thing that you might want to consider too along those lines, thanks Kevin, Ken, is that computer nowadays, they have limited ports, like my Surface Pro only has
Yeah.
one USB port and it's got a power port that you can plug in and it pushes out video and data as well too, but those limitations. But that's where the, if you have access to the internet, if you had a cloud storage, whether it's OneDrive, Dropbox, a Google Drive or all that, so if you had your files out there, you can, as long as you can access a web browser, you should be able to access those files. Now, whether you can download onto the place where you're at, that where the restriction might be, but absolutely, that could be a consideration. One thing that I want to show you too, some people do training cards back in the training centers. Most people don't realize that PowerPoint is a basic graphics editor. You could do graphics with it, and I'll show you an example. So when I go back to open up a new document, this is the window that you're going to get. It's either going to open or create a new. So it's either going to be from Office template or it's going to be personal. So if I have personal ones, I will click on it, which I do. You can see the one that I used over here. So I'm going to open this up because I want to show you something. So how would this, what do you think this is? This is an actual training card that I created. We print those plastic, we have that printer. So we create these. Do me a favor. So somebody take out your phone and take a picture of this QR code. The camera, if you have an iPhone, should work. Or if you have an Android, it should work as well too. So do me a favor, take a picture of that, and they should ask you if you want to open up a web page, right? So what do you get, Phil? Were you able to get it? Yeah.
Yes.
So that's what I like to do. There we go. So all that I'd like to do is, this is when I create a training card, this is where the guy to come in program the printer. So I have the one that shows how I want it to look, and the one that he uses to put in there. This is the variable fields that he would have to put in there so I can put in the information I need. But you can see, so when I create cards, I have the QR code. So this is another resource where students don't necessarily have to, well, I didn't know. It's like you're putting it in your hands in your training card. So this one over here shows you the same thing, it just without the fields. And then here, one showing him, the person that sets up the printer, where exactly those fields and what they have to look like. So if I go to a different card, same thing, same thing. So now this code is for fall protection. And if I go back all the way down to the end, over here, I have different backgrounds that I can use, or I have different cards over here that I created. This is PowerPoint, by the way. And then if I click on that, all right, so somebody take a picture of this and tell me what you see, if you don't mind, please. There's not going to be any nasty websites.
PC30 calendar.
So basically, this is what I do with the cards. This is the back of the card that you're looking at. So when people are asking, when's the next class? Pull out your card, take a picture of it. That's your calendar. That's always up to date. So when we print our calendars, they're always locked into when we printed those. So I make that possible by using PowerPoint to create those templates. So the way it works, let me get this out of the way so I can see all my menus again. I'm gonna go into design, I believe. So and then design.
How do you make the code?
Yeah, go ahead.
How do you make the code again?
The code actually, Windows 10, you can make it by default. So if you type in on your search window, depending on what version of Windows you have, QR code is probably going to give you an option. One of the apps is going to open up something that can make that. So you would type in the web address, or you would type in a message. You could type in anything you want to, and it would create that code. So those are very easy. If you do a quick Google search, free QR code creator for Windows or for Mac or for whatever, you could create them. I have those as well too on my computer. But QR codes are pretty handy. When I was talking before, Joe, too, about the communication, the SDSs, you can create a QR code just like that too. And if you add those files, those safety data sheets in the Google Dropbox or Google Drive, somebody take a picture of that, it will take them right there. It's listed by manufacturer, listed by product. So you can also use the QR code for that too.
You almost wonder, why don't the
You can do anything with that.
manufacturers put it right on their cans, you know? They should put a QR code for their SDS.
Actually, you're seeing it more and more. You're seeing it more and more too. I don't know if you guys have a taping program as well, But on the AIM stapling tools, at least for a while, they were putting in the bazookas. They were sticking the QR code on it. If you scan that, it would take you to a YouTube video where it show you the basics about how to run that tool. So
Yeah,
they
it'd be
are
good if
kind of
they had
using
it.
it in a way.
It'd be good if they had it right on the paint buckets,
So you can do. Some of them I've seen they do have it, and then some of the other the airless pumps and all that. Graco was putting some of those that instead of taking you to a web browser, it would take you to an app. So that when you're inspecting, when you're doing maintenance in that pump, you would enter those records in there. So the next person that takes a picture of that would get an updated record of that pump, the history of the maintenance of that pump and all that. And then I know DBI Sala was coming out with harnesses, full body harnesses with a QR code too, where you can scan that, it would open up an app, and then within the app, that's where your records are for inspection and all that. So that is another angle to that.
I like that with the cert cards. It's a good idea.
All right, so yeah. So this over here, let me show you. I was going to go into the design tab over here. And there, customize. So basically, I'm in the PowerPoint still. So the way it created this, when you open up a PowerPoint, if you go into design and then customize, you can make that slide whatever size you want. Could somebody tell me what's the difference from standard 4:3 format and then widescreen 16:9 format? Because this is basically PowerPoint. You can set it up right here. So if you know that you're in your training center and you have the old format with the old TVs, more of a squarish angle, then that would be your standard format. Widescreen would be the newer HD TVs, the 1080, the 4Ks and all that. This is the format, 16:9. So if you have an older projector, you probably want to set it up to this so that it looks, everything fits, it doesn't distort anything. And then this one would be if you have a newer system. But in here, it's just, you have a lot more control than that. So I'm going to go slide down to custom slide size. And can somebody tell me what does that mean right here on the left side? So in here, once you get in, it gives you a different option that you could choose. So I stuck to custom and I created my own dimension. This would be neat if somebody had a ruler or tape measure on them. I would ask you to measure your driver's license. Guess what it's going to measure? 2 1/8 by 3 3/8 credit card size. So that's why I created this file size, because that's what I want to output. So when they put it into, when I create these into JPEGs, it doesn't distort my image at all. Let's see, let me double check something. All right, so does anybody have any questions? Let's go ahead and open it up, because I think, Phil, you're up at 7 minutes, or somebody's up in 7 minutes. I know, actually, it's, yes, Phil. So I don't want to take any of his time, so let's go ahead. If people have any questions, so this is basically how I set it up. I highly recommend that when you start using PowerPoint, the first thing that you do, go to File, and then go to, what was it? More in this case, because I lost my, then Account. And in here, unless you have an Office 365 subscription, which is always going to be the most up-to-date version of PowerPoint, it's going to tell you whether it's, what is it, 2018, 2016, Office 2016, PowerPoint 2016, 2007. And then once you find out what version you have, go on YouTube and do tutorials, PowerPoint, and then put the version number that you have. That's how you're going to pick up the most information. That's, if you look at most of your kids, those of us that have kids, how do they learn this stuff? YouTube. Spencer, you got a comment, a question?
Yeah, you're talking about settings within PowerPoint, but and I think you mentioned this, but if you go down to video settings in Zoom and you click on that little up arrow, it will bring up your video settings, and in the video settings you have an option to do a 16:9 widescreen, the original ratio, and then right below it, it also has enable HD. And if you you know, if you need a little more real estate to show something, for example, if you're doing, if you're using a flip chart and you're in front of the screen, or if you're maybe even doing, you know, a demonstration, scaffold demonstration or something like that via Zoom, you can click on Enable HD. And if you do that, it gives you a little broader screen to display what you're doing. I don't know if you can see that when I clicked on that, but this is the not HD, but when I click on HD, it opens it up and shows a little bit more. So just another option to change the display if you need it. And that's under video settings in Zoom.
So along with what Spencer just said too, that was why. So if you notice when you went to HD, it kind of seems further away. It's because you have a lot more pixels, so the image gets a little bit smaller. So when you were having a hard time when I was trying to show stuff yesterday, it's because of the resolution. It makes that something that's much smaller. So the only issue that you might have is if whatever you're using, if you're using a projector or external display to teach you classes, if it's got a 4:3 format, that's a square, and then you set your presentation mode to 16:9, you're going to have bands on top. So instead of gaining more real estate, you're going to lose it because it's going to shrink lengthwise, which also shrinks because it maintains the same proportion. But absolutely, you're absolutely right. That's been so in there too when Spencer's talking about. So let me show you real quick too. So a 16:9 format. Let's see. On slideshow kind of goes with that too. So this over here, don't overlook this. So sometimes when you're showing your PowerPoint presentation, it shows up on the wrong screen. This is where you change that. So when you go into slideshow and then monitors, so this over here, you would tell it where's the presentation going to show up. So sometimes it might be the wrong monitor. It might be the computer that you have, the desktop that you have, instead of the external extended desktop. So you would have this. So you can change this over your primary monitor or the secondary, which is my external monitor. So does anybody have any questions, any particular about how you work this and all that? Like I said, this is a little more, like try to cover a little more, but also don't limit yourself to this is just show up screen after screen after screen. You
Dave,
can
I'm
make
looking
it
for the
as
account.
complicated as you want.
I'm looking for the
The
account.
account, if you go on file,
I looked in there. It's
if you go on
not
file,
there.
the left side,
Yeah, it has
and then
everything
you should
but
go
that.
under account. Because on my screen over here, I kind of lose some of that. So if I don't click on this, I can't see the account because of my resolution displays that I have. But if I click on more, then I get the account.
Yeah.
The options are real briefly too. This is the stuff that you want to have on your menus. This is your ribbon. It's everything that's on top. So these are the buttons that you have. You can put on top. So if I get out of here and go back on my PowerPoint, you see those buttons up here?
Mm-hmm.
These are useful. I can never find those. So those I put in myself. So if I was, let's say I'm gonna type in and then for whatever reason I needed to do a symbol like a squared, then I click on that and then I put it up here so it doesn't type the right number. So for me, those are useful things that I want to have. Language as well too. So if I click over here because of my resolution, it's got more buttons. But you would have to play that because it varies a little bit by version that you have. But it's always going to be in your file menu. It's always going to be in your file menu. Used to be, I forget what they used to call it, but now it's account. So this is the newest version of PowerPoint.
Oh,
If you have
okay.
like 1 or 2 ago, it might be a little bit different.
Yeah, mine's a real old.
All right, so if nobody has any other question, if you have a question or something you've been wanting to do, you can't do, maybe I can help you out with it. Shoot me an email, and then I could try and help you with that. So unless anybody has any other questions or comments, I hope that I didn't confuse the hell out of you. I hope that at least you learned 1 or 2 things, especially with Zoom. But I know this is something that we come from the field, and if all we ever did was work in the field, and now we got to teach, these are the tools that we got to use that we got to attract the newer generation. So don't be afraid of the computer. Don't be afraid of Zoom. You can make it work for you. It can make you a better instructor. Don't be afraid of it. That's all I got, Phil or Kevin.
Dave, that's an excellent job. There's a lot to take in that time frame. Maybe, especially myself, the shortcuts are a tremendous help. I don't know a lot of them. So I don't know what you utilize for, where would somebody go for a resource on the shortcuts themselves?
So let me show you something. I think, let me share a screen real quick. Stop sharing the one. So Phil, before you, let me just butt in just for a minute. So I'm gonna share one more screen, and then I'm done, I promise. Now I've lost my menu.
Not a problem at all.
Menu.
Till tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
So trying to find, since I have so many things buried now, so now I kind of get access to the stuff that I need. All right, so now here we go. So I'm going to share the screen, and let me just find this. What I want to share, this stuff over here. Going along the length of the lines of what Spencer was just talking about. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Or no? Okay,
Yes,
so
we
in
can.
here, it just opened up the settings. I'll tell you, that resolution kind of throws me off because I can't see anything. So in here, anyways, let me move that around, see if I can get to it. Let me minimize that window before I bring it up. This is the one thing that is not good about Zoom, that you cannot modify the settings. But going to what you just asked, Kevin, if you go on your settings on the app, and then you go down to slide keyboard shortcuts, it's got a whole bunch of this whole section on it.
Okay.
Shortcuts.
All right,
Zoom.
awesome.
So in there you have that as well too. So
thank you.
All right, so I appreciate it. All right, Phil, now you can boot me off.
No, it's very good. Thank you, David. I appreciate that. I learned something every time I sat under the sound of his voice, so it's always nice. I had a couple people text me during that say, "Did you know that?" No, I did not. Now I do. So I do appreciate that. It was very good. Everything I'm getting ready to do is going to build on everything David just taught us. We're going to do something a little bit different. Can everybody see the screen? It should say the adult learner visual aids. All right, yes. Let me pull this up so I can see. I asked a question and then I didn't blow up my own screen so I could see everybody's responses. So let's see. Okay, so just a couple things, you know, as we're going through there. I know I've heard David teach on these topics before, and visual aids is definitely going to shake hands with everything that he said. There's some pros and some cons in the visual aids that we use. One of those things, and maybe you hit it, I did take a few calls during that, I won't lie. David, did you hit on adding notes and presenter view? Nope. Okay, so I've seen a couple heads shaking there. I know a lot of times when you're using a PowerPoint, it is nice to be able to have some key points for you to remember. I know when I first started doing PowerPoints, I wrote myself notes that went along with them as I would teach them so that I wouldn't put every single thing that I wanted to say inside of that visual aid. And I went as detailed to write, "Get excited here." You know, I wanted everything as the best I could present and make sure that when I created that PowerPoint or when I was presenting that PowerPoint, I was delivering it to the same enthusiasm that I built it. If you are pretty diverse as far as being able to create PowerPoints, then what I'm about to say may not help you, maybe it will. But I know that when I build a PowerPoint, I always start with the first PowerPoint and I write down this same phrase every single time. And it's after this lesson, you will be able to. And then I write the key things that I want for that PowerPoint to do for me and to do for the students. And I try to keep it down to 4 or 5 bullet points. So as I start to write that out, you know, I want you to have understanding of this, and I want you to have understanding of this. I want you to know from my PowerPoint yesterday, I want you to know what your resources are. And if there's a tool that has helped me throughout the years, I want to write those things down. So I'll put know how to find your resources, know what tools are available. And then the first thing I do is I print that off to keep me on track. Then I'll stick with my key points of what I want to do. I want to understand this. And then I start writing down everything that will keep me in line with that as I go. And then I noticed I was out at Hanover, and there was a particular person who was writing these notes in a different way. And they were actually on the PowerPoint, but they weren't on the screen so everybody could see. And that's what they call presenter view. And if you guys can see my mouse here moving around, down at the bottom, you can click on notes. When you click on notes, you can put anything you want. I hope you like this, you know, anything you want to put in there. And then when you look at your icons here at the top, this emblem right here is start from the beginning, but you can go to slideshow and from the current slide, or you can choose presenter view. So if you choose presenter view, and it's asking me to connect, you can see every note that you don't want the student to see to keep you on track. That is really a nice feature when you're using the visual aid of a PowerPoint. So I'm just going to open this up so you guys should be able to see. And on my right-hand side of the screen, what you cannot see is my presenter view. So every time I get off on what I'm trying to teach, you won't know any better, but I will, because I can follow my own notes. So visual aids are very, very important in illustrating your point. What you want to do when you're teaching, regardless of the visual aid that you're using, whether it be a PowerPoint, whether it be a prop, whether it be a video, you want to make sure that it is first and foremost appropriate, and you want to make sure that it is going to draw the mind into the topic that you're about to teach. Now, when I teach, I like my students to take notes. I don't make it mandatory, but one of the things I do is I tell them about how I take notes. So as we're teaching through OSHA and the regulations and hazard awareness, I'll usually go to the sub part of what I'm getting ready to teach. That way they can categorize their notes. And then we'll go into them how some of the letters in the alphabet in the CFR actually correlate with the sub part that we're actually getting ready to teach. That's the first step in drawing them in. But regardless of the PowerPoint or the type of PowerPoint or whatever the visual aid is, not necessarily PowerPoint, that you accomplish your goal of drawing their mind into the topic by any means appropriate. But you don't want to make it so complicated that they can't keep up with what you're doing. No one in the room is going to be under the sound of your voice if they're stupid. Okay, so we don't want to use that term. But what they are is maybe ignorant to all of the possibilities that they could be facing and dealing with on the job and not knowing the right way and the wrong way. I reference a lot of times back to the training that I had when I worked non-union. And when I worked non-union, I did not get really good formal training. A lot of it was just what they had learned over the years, and sometimes it was wrong. So you can take something really complex and you can make it more complex. And that is the exact opposite of what you want to do with the visual aids that you choose. You want to use everything you put in there as a guide or an outline of a presentation, just talking points. You don't want to read what you're doing word for word. And that's where the note sections are really good. If you practice your PowerPoints, you practice using your visual aids, a lot of times you can kind of predetermine what the questions are going to be. so that you will anticipate those and be prepared for them. Okay, so let's go through some of the visual aids options that we have. Obviously, we talked about PowerPoint, but you can also use flip charts. Now, one of the things I'm going to be touching on as we go through here is flip charts as a really good tool. And I don't know if we use flip charts as much as we use, you know, whiteboards to draw everything out. But some people have real issues with spelling. Now, me, I'm horrible at spelling. I'll be the first one to tell you. But as we go through this, you wouldn't know it because I have a tool on my visual aid called Spell Check, which works great for PowerPoint, but not so well with flip charts. I actually learned a good trick from Jason Cornett, who's actually on here. And he said, hey, I understand, you know, you have reservations about using a flip chart. And he said, let me show you a tool. He said, go through and everything that you want to highlight, everything that you want to bring to the surface in your teaching, go through your flip chart and with a pencil very lightly write everything out so that you know that it's spelled correctly. So the next day when you're actually going through that, from a distance of 5 feet or more, you can't see that light pencil line that's actually on there. But I can, which helps me keep me straight with what I want to do. And if the angle or the area that I'm going to doesn't line up with what I've got written down, I've got multiple pages or I have more than one flip chart. And I'll just decide to use this one instead of that one. So flip charts are still a good tool, even if you're like me and not the greatest at spelling. Video clips. I believe David hit this earlier in the day. Video clips are a great visual tool. You definitely don't want to create an environment where someone comes to learn and you're using really greater than 25% of the whole class. If you're doing that, they're instantly wondering after about the second hour why you just didn't email them the clips to YouTube so that they could take their OSHA training at home. Video clips are great to illustrate a point. They're a good visual aid, but they're not the teacher. They're not the instructor. You are. So limit what you use. Now, you can also use pieces of equipment. So the trainers that I worked with at District Council 91, we used to use our display box. And what we did was we had all kinds of different stuff in there to illustrate our points as we would go through. We would have PPE, we would have fall protection devices, we would have you know, different attachments for anchor points, just kind of a go-to box to pull it out and go over with the student to be able to illustrate a point. If you're pointing at a picture, you're kind of limited, but you make it real, you make it tangible. If someone can hold it, pass it around, and you can actually go through it in class. Those are the best visual aids, because then the student gets engaged to the point to go, I've never seen one quite like this, or this is not quite the model that I use on the job. And then you're engaging your student in participating in that, even if you've got this guy who doesn't want to do anything, as you pass it around, it might trigger something in his head to say, so how does this work? Or what applications could I use this in? Or I noticed earlier you said that, you know, when it comes to PPE, I should definitely know the limitations. What's the limitations of this? You know, just different things to incite your students and to get them actively involved in that conversation. Like I said, PowerPoint presentations are great, okay? And a combination of all the different ones that we're going to talk about today are equally as great. But PowerPoint presentations, as far as advantages, you know, they look nice, they appear very professional, they even look cool, they make great sounds, they're animated, and it's a very up-to-date technology. As we went through with David, he talked about how you can save these PowerPoints, you can change them, you can add different elements to them. There's so many different advantages to being able to use a PowerPoint. But again, it's made to keep you on track, not to do the whole teaching for you. So they're good for large groups. They're also good for small groups. They're easy to integrate into a classroom discussion. but there's some disadvantages too. PowerPoint presentations, the disadvantages can be introductory depending on technology rather than a good class dynamic. One of the biggest disadvantages that's not in the PowerPoint that I want to talk about was I got sent out to do an OSHA 30, and this was probably 7 or 8 years ago. The computer crashed on me. So I didn't have that resource, or I didn't have that visual aid anymore. So it's not necessary that you absolutely have a PowerPoint presentation. Just use a different aid to be able to get yourself from A to B. At the end of the day, if you can go back to that sheet that says, in my PowerPoint, this is what I want the student to be able to do. And you can address those questions and you can answer each one of those questions that you did it with or without that particular aid, then you did your job. So they do require special equipment. As we talked about all the different things that could go wrong, right? An embed didn't work, or you embedded it, you created the PowerPoint on your computer, you thought it was a great tool, you took it to work, you put it on a totally different computer, now it doesn't work at all, none of your links work, I can't get to where I'm going. Those are all PowerPoint presentation disadvantages. Okay, so they do require significant time to create basic graphics and composition skills, as we learned in the last one. So tips for PowerPoint text. Remember the KISS principle. Okay, so I did change this one a little bit because I don't like calling people stupid. I don't believe there's that many stupid people, even though I'm sure if I opened up communication, somebody would argue with me. But you want to keep it simple. Use the KISS system. Summarize. Use bite-sized pieces to focus the attention on what you want to say, to make sure that the point got from A to B. Understanding is key in making sure that people get home to their families every day. And that's the whole point, the whole purpose of OSHA's intent is to make sure that we live to get home. Make sure there's not more than 7 items per slide. Have you guys seen that PowerPoint where there's 50 things to read and just can't get there because there's so much to read? Now you're facing the PowerPoint the entire time, reading it verbatim instead of actually paying attention to the students, because reaction are everything. You can literally, without any words, go over a section and really be able to pick up on whether your students are understanding what you're saying, where you're going, all by their body language. No more than 7 items per slide. Okay, so try no bullets, just picture to promote the discussion. Those are really good tools as well. There's some tools that we use during the Focus 4, hazard recognition, to be able to show a series of pictures to engage the student to be able to pick out what is wrong. And then you can have the students elaborate on that and actually say, okay, so what should we do in this situation? One main idea per slide is really all you need. You don't want to pack a slide so full that you can't understand what's going on. One of the things that will help you to do that, to minimize how many items are on a slide, is to use the correct font. You should not be using a font that is less than 24. 24 is going to give you the appropriate starting size to be able to lay out all your points, but as you notice, you can make your header bigger, okay, just to illustrate your point. Adding pictures and adding color and adding different size fonts are good as well, but you don't want to add more than 2 fonts per slide. It just becomes too confusing. If you try to add multiple slides, you try adding 1,000 different points all at the same time, you're going to run into problems because it's so busy, people's heads are going to spin. So I don't know if any of you have ever seen this video. But I do want to take watch a short video real quick, and I'm going to try to follow the direction that I received from.
That there's some things I hate about PowerPoint, and I figure it's kind of my duty to point them out. So here we go. Here's common PowerPoint mistakes. Number one, people tend.
Okay, hang on 1 second. I'm gonna stop sharing.
There's some things I hate about PowerPoint, and I figure it's kind of my duty to point them out. So here we go. Here's common PowerPoint mistakes. Number one, people tend to put every word they are going to say on their PowerPoint slides. Although this eliminates the need to memorize your talk, ultimately this makes your slides crowded, wordy, and boring. You will lose your audience's attention before you even reach the bottom of your first slide. Please don't do that anymore, please. Number two, most common, many people do not run spell check. Big mistake. Nothing makes you look stupider than spelling errors. If it's got a red line under it, recheck the spelling. And finally, I hate this. Avoid excessive bullet pointing, only bullet key points. Too many bullet points, and your key messages will not stand out. Hence the bullet point. Bad color schemes, not good. Clashing background and font colors can lead to distraction, confusion, headache, nausea, vomiting, and loss of bladder control. I can't stay on that one too long. Here's something I've noticed. The number of PowerPoint slides you have in your talk, the less useful your talk actually is. Unfortunately, my presentation is right there. I've also noticed this. People love to pack data into their presentations. They shove more and more data thinking it's better, but it's not. The more data you have, the harder it is to read your slide, and the effectiveness plummets. Now you can improve the effectiveness by adding some shading and some 3D effects and then some second order and third order effects, and then, I know, let's add some labels. That'll help a lot. And that's pretty much every marketing slide I've ever seen right there. Now, I'm into in animation. People become animators in PowerPoint. You can have things flying all over the place, and that can be good. If you're a visual learner, that will improve the effectiveness of your performance. But if you're easily distracted, more animations, and people have no idea what you're talking about. They're just, wow, that is cool, wow. And there's regions here, by the way. There's the simple but effective region. There's the active but confusing, the effective but boring, the active but ineffective, the dull but static region, the busy but useless, the ADD only region, the useful but amusing, the stupid but confusing, the dull triangle, the hyper triangle, the sleepy square, the dizzying pentagon, and everything else I just call pointless motion. That slide right there took me an hour and a half to make, right there. PowerPoint can just suck the life out of you. It's amazing. I've also come up with this. It's a kind of a little science I've invented called font analysis. Basically, the font you choose says something about who you are as a person. There's a huge list of fonts, and you choose one, and that says something about you. So be careful the font you choose. For example, if you choose Courier New, it happens to be my favorite, you're probably organized and structured. If you choose Matisse, it means you're artistic. And if you choose Times New Roman, it means you're lazy, apathetic, and unimaginative, and you always use the default. Oh. A lot of Times New Roman people, welcome. We have some more. If you use freehand script, you're a horrible speller, so you try to hide it with a hard-to-read font. Very smart. If you use Gothic, it means you're very pale and you wear black. And if you choose Wingding, it means you're a nerd and you have no life. In fact, if you know what those symbols mean, you will never have a date, trust me. Don't bother.
All right, so I think everybody gets the point, what I'm trying to do there, making sure that
And basic probability.
trying to reshare my screen to the right one. Share. All right, so brings us back to slide number 1. Let me see if I can get my video back up so I can see everybody. Let's see. Escape, close that. Back to here. That is tomorrow's lesson. We'll go back here. Okay, so if you guys are looking at my screen, then we're back to the very first screen. Now, if any of you have had a very long PowerPoint and you do not know this trick, then your first instinct was going to be to go ahead and restart the PowerPoint and then click through 375,000 slides to get back to the one that you were on before. A quick and easy way is under slideshow. Go back down to the slide that you were on and then hit from current slide. And then you're right back on track to where you were before. Okay, so.
I have a question there.
Yes.
So just like you just did now, and we're always using like some kind of projector or large TV right now for visuals.
Yep.
I go and do that, and then I hit F5 for full screen, and it starts in the beginning.
Yeah, and F5 is pretty much the same as hitting start from the beginning. Not every computer, and David may be able to weigh in on this, not every computer has the same function as far as F5. It may do something different. When you're dealing with that, it is better to go from presenter's view, and I'm just going to go back. Well, I think I was going to go back. Go back to where you were, and then you, so if I hit F5 on this computer, it is going to, or function 5, let's see, shift 5. Yep, it doesn't do anything for me. So it's depending on the computer, the laptop, or what you have, that function may work, but it's always going to take you back to slide 1. If there is a function that will take you to your current slide, I am not aware of it. David, do you know what there is?
Try shift F5.
Okay.
A lot of times, Joe, you want to be careful too. The F keys vary a lot by computer, like Phil's saying. So they're not all going to be the same universal commands, though they go with the operating system. They're a little more consistent. Like the Control A, Control C, Control V, Windows B, you know, those are pretty universal as long as you're using that operating system. But the F keys might vary a lot.
Well, I mean, it works. It does what it's supposed to do, and that's give me full screen, but it goes and resets the PowerPoint to the first slide. So is there a way, you know, because there's always something like your middle, you know, you cut for break. Like when we do SSPC courses, you know, the C3s and stuff, they're very long. You got to take breaks in between it. I mean, it's a week-long lead course. Well, I cut them for lunch. I don't want to have to sit there and stare at the PowerPoint. There's stuff I have to do to get ready for the, you know, after break or the next slides or courses. When I go back to it, it starts it back in the front of the slide. And you're talking, you know, 200 slide PowerPoint here. So is there a way to get it to go full screen from the current slide without restarting it to, you know,
Actually,
without F5?
If you look at the bottom right, Joe, if you look at the bottom right of the menu, you see those little icons. And what is it? 1, 2, 3, the fourth icon in the bottom right of the screen, fill screen, the PowerPoint, that takes you right to the slide where you're at, that one.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was wondering, because every time I hit F5, it'd take you to the beginning of the PowerPoint. It gave you the full screen option, but it would start the whole PowerPoint over. So that's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, David. And Spencer was also correct. When I hit Shift F5, it did take me back to the current slide as well. As opposed to just hitting function 5, I hit Shift F5, and it took me back to the same PowerPoint that I was on when we hit escape. So one of those two options should help with that.
Thank you.
But I thank you for the question. I appreciate that. When you're using a PowerPoint, you can definitely overkill it. And although it's funny, you know, the video that we just showed as far as too much information, it's real easy to add too much information, even though you're trying to make one, one key point. For example, right here is a very, very busy slide. Okay, and this can be controlled a whole lot better by just splitting it up a little bit. There's nothing wrong with going in and editing it and maybe just hitting enter and separating your points. This could have been avoided by taking paragraph 1, paragraph 2, 3, and 4 and putting those between a couple different slides. Nothing wrong with that. So when I was looking at this to clean it up, what we did was imagine yourself reading this, you know, word for word, and the number 3 is exactly what they're going to hear. When you have students that are paying attention to what you're doing and they're reading along, which is just emphasizing the point of their understanding, you want to make sure that it is not just visually good for you, you want to make sure that it's visually good for the student, so that as they're reading along, because that may be their learning style, that they hear it and they see it, you have to make it to where they can understand it as well. So little things like being able to add titles and then shrink the text down so that they can stay on focus. You're still saying the exact same things, but now they know, number 1, we're talking about adjustable guards. And then there's more information that I can get from subparagraphs 3 and subparagraphs 4. And then on section or number 2, maximum exposure. Again, the same thing. The 2 slides say the exact same thing, but how you bring out or illustrate your point will make it less confusing for the student so that they can dive into what you're talking about. Does that make sense? Does that look better? I think it looks a whole lot better. All right, so colors. Colors can be a part of your text, part of your background. You can use different illustrations, but colors can add problems. When I first started building PowerPoints, I liked effects. I liked noises. I liked the words to sweep in, to sweep out. I liked where, as I'm saying it, you know, you text in, and then after a while, it just become a distraction. Colors can do the same thing. They can illustrate a point. They can bring a point right to the surface of understanding. And then they can also disappear in the background where it's not going to make any sense. So colors can be good and colors can be bad. Just make sure that when you build your PowerPoint, as you look through the information, start the PowerPoint every once in a while, so that you're seeing it in full view of what the students are going to see, because you may need to go back in and re-edit that section to where it makes sense, or the color just doesn't stand out. Always test the slide before the class is what I'm saying. So here we have a nice yellow background. So on this yellow background, blue, red, green, black, they all work. Nice thing about the IUPAT, you got black and gold, we can make the colors work. If they're all blue, does it say the same thing? Yeah, it says the same thing, but it's not popping out because blue's no longer blue, red's no longer red, green's no longer green, and so on and so forth. You want to make sure that when you're putting your color in, it illustrates your point. There's nothing wrong, absolutely nothing wrong with having a slide that is one color and then a slide that's another color. Like when we first started this and we started talking about the pros and the cons of PowerPoints, if you notice, I took a picture, and instead of making it a small part of the color background that I worked so hard to create, I wanted to illustrate that point. So I brought it to a full-size screen so that when it switches from one to another, it's different. It's very evident to the student that I'm getting ready to talk about something totally different. All of those are good illustration points or good visual communication. Colors can also be used in different ways. For example, you can use red for excitement or to really illustrate a danger that's happening inside of a PowerPoint. However, sometimes red is hard to see when projected or combined with colors or a picture. So if you guys are looking at the screen, you're going to see how It does not complement each other, even though my intention was to illustrate excitement for red so that they could clearly see the hazard. Putting the wrong color combinations together, using the wrong size text can totally distract from the visual that you're trying to get across. So I changed it to blue. Oh, that's much better. It's still the exact same thing. You've got to have the right color at the forefront and the right color at the background to illustrate that point. And if I hit escape and took both of those slides back to where we could edit them, they look pretty good. They don't look like that's the way they're going to appear as we go through there, but they will appear that way if I test that before I get going on it.
Hey, Phil, can I make a comment on that too?
Absolutely.
On those slides too, if you have a projector, depending on what kind of projector you have, they're going to look even worse.
Very good point.
That kind of lighting. So it depends on the lighting and the projector you're using.
Yeah, so not just testing it on your computer, also testing it on the piece of equipment or pieces, as it may, of equipment that you're going to be using. Now, I do use a lot of text and arrows and things of that nature when I'm trying to illustrate a point. We look at this picture and it's very busy. And it's okay to be busy. It's okay that we're asking the students to take a look around and find the things that are not right. But if I'm talking about scaffolding, and that's my focal point, I want to make sure that they understand that there may be other things that are wrong in this, but specific to scaffolding, there's an issue. So as you can see, I put that big arrow right down there at the bottom. Everybody see that? Okay. If you're using arrows, make sure they're big enough to see. Make sure that they really just over-exaggerate your point to where their eyes are focused right on the visual so that they get the intent and you didn't waste your time going and finding the right picture to illustrate your point at that moment during that subject. You can use the same arrows in a different color to illustrate safety. Here we have a very nice guardrail that is going to protect anyone that's on that roof. And we don't want to use red. We don't want to use orange. Safety generally implies or is implied by the color green. Now, whether you choose to text inside that box or choose not to text inside that box, it's still a great illustration or a great point. So here we have totally different color, still means the same thing, but reading the label before you use the chemical is important. Illustrate that by a broadband box. Illustrate that by an arrow pointing at what he's reading is a good way to get across to your students just a key point that you should be reading to know what you're using and what the hazards associated with it are. Do you guys remember David took us through how to add shapes? And I can't remember if he talked about how to infill those colors, but generally when you add a shape, it'll immediately prompt you to be able to add text, to add colors or different illustrations inside of that PowerPoint. Not really that hard, but I never want to be that trainer who says you should be able to do this without offering a resource. At the beginning of every PowerPoint that I've taught thus far, it's got my name, my email, my phone number. If you guys are creating something, and I'm sure David and Kevin and anybody else on here would feel the exact same way. We want everyone to be successful. So if you're going through there, you're like, hey, I know David taught me how to do that, but I can't remember exactly what it said. Shoot him an email, and he'll interrupt me if I'm wrong. Call him at 3 o'clock in the morning. I do. Okay, so when you're using vocabulary, make sure it's appropriate vocabulary. And there is a lot of discussion as to whether you should be using profanity or not using profanity, but that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the type of words that you're using. In the second slide, we talked about not reading PowerPoints word for word. Now, I could have threw the word verbatim out there, and I could throw 1,000 other words out there, or maybe even look up a few different words to make it sound like I'm smarter than I am. The reality is I'm a construction worker just like they are. I'm not going to use big words or talk over my audience to sound or to look smarter than they are. My whole reason for doing this and using these visual aids is to bring it down where the rubber meets the road, to make sure that it is very easy, it is very simple, and safety is not hard. So there's the term out there, you know, put the cookies within reach of your students, right? So your job is to make things that are complex simple, not make them more complex. Put cookies where the kids can get them, so to speak. So spelling and grammar, does it matter? Yeah, it matters. It's not the focal point of everything you do, and depending on what type of visual aid you're using, we talked about one way that you can actually give yourself more confidence to be able to use that visual aid. So as you guys can see, I did not use spell check on this one, and I did try to make it a little more abundant that spelling is important, but everyone's human. But it can distract depending on what type of students that you have in your classroom. Some of them may be looking for typos, anything they can do to discredit anything that you're saying. And even if that's not their intent, it can change the context of what you're saying by using the wrong homonym of like to, TO, TWO, or TOO, using those types of things in your PowerPoint. Still says the same thing, right? Spelling and grammar matter. Safety is an important part of production. Still legible. Check your spelling before you prepare. It should be part of something that you do. It's not that everyone is going to judge you for everything that you're doing, but this is the visual aid that you chose. This is the delivery system that you have chosen to use. So the probability that you will misspell a word is going to be directly proportional to the number of people watching you. It's going to happen. Not that big of a deal. How you react is a big deal. But one of the things you can do is you can hit escape, you can correct it, and you can go right back to what you're doing, and no one's the wiser. You want to make sure that when you're illustrating your points, that you illustrate them with whatever appropriate means that you have. Illustrations are windows of the mind. Everybody loves stories. Everybody loves pictures. So sometimes the image on the screen doesn't necessarily have to be for the student. It can be for you too. It can remind you of a particular event, maybe even a near miss, anything that's going to bring out what you're trying to say, to hold the group's interest. Lean on your experience. Now, one of the things that I started doing when I was a first trainer was I only leaned on my experiences. I was very fortunate to work with a lot of instructors that told me good stories. And they said, look, these stories are not all ours. Steal those stories. Make them a part of your teaching. There's nothing wrong with that. If you're illustrating a point, whether it's your story or someone else's story, it doesn't matter. Just make sure they're good stories, they're real, they're relevant, and they're timely, and they illustrate the point that you're trying to say. Nothing wrong with stealing stories. There's at least 4 people on this in this 502 that I've stolen some great stories from. Pictures with text are great. Just try not to make it to where the text is not being able to be seen. Make sure it's relevant. Make sure the picture is as big as possible, because like we were talking about before, when you're teaching, it may look fine on your 56-inch TV at home, but when you get to work and you're talking about a projector that has a low quality, it may not be as clear as it needs to be. As you guys can see with the first picture in the top left, it's kind of fuzzy, kind of blurry. Okay, that was intentional. That was intentional to show you that if a picture is as big as you want it to be, but it's no longer clear what you're trying to say, use a different picture. Make sure the resolution is good enough to be able to expand that image to get across to your audience what you're trying to say. Okay, so don't stretch it any more than what the picture can handle. So here's a couple good pictures just to replace these pictures. Make sure they're free. You can steal them off of the web, and they can vary in the slide layout. Sometimes use multiple pictures for comparison. So if you guys remember in the PowerPoint that we talked about yesterday, I had a comparison picture of where a job site would look like if you were using no dust control whatsoever, and then if you were using more modern controls to be able to control that dust. That illustrated a very good point that there are tools to be able to control the hazard. Full-size pictures, they put you in the situation. They improve words with fill color and transparency of the fill color. Okay, so we looked at this picture in the last slide, if you guys recall. So it should look totally different now because I didn't put it in a background. I really want to illustrate this point, so I brought it right to the forefront on the PowerPoint. I gave it its own page to be able to illustrate that point. That this is not, I said I wasn't going to use stupid. This is not a smart way to get this job done. But you also want to make sure that if you put a picture up and it's kind of confusing, that you use different elements to add to the picture to re-illustrate your point. As I said from the beginning, I love arrows, so I'm going to be using them every time I can. Now the picture is going to tell the story, but I want the arrows to point out what I'm specifically trying to say of what's wrong with this picture. So we have bad lifting techniques, okay, bent straight over. I think that's probably the worst of it, wouldn't you agree? Or not the worst of it. The hard hat, definitely not right. And the shoring technique, not good enough. So there are thousands of ways to do things wrong, right? And illustrations should show the way to do things right. If you're going to put images in there, try to show the right way and the wrong way and really focus on the right way whatever illustration that you choose. So in relevance, people differ in what makes things relevant to them. Relevant to them for some is regulations. Some people, the exact communication of this is the law is going to tie them right into what you're saying because that's what they want. That is exactly how you're going to get them to pay attention. But you might have individuals in there that's the exact opposite way to get their attention, is by telling them what they should and what they shall have to do. The whole point when you teach is to make sure that you draw your students in, make sure that you pull them into what you're trying to say. And I think everybody would agree with me in what we're trying to say is whether we're talking about the law, or whether we're talking about getting home at the end of the day. Those are one and the same, but they can be said a different way. You have to make sure that the illustrations, you have to make sure that the PowerPoint, the flip charts, the videos, everything you're using is the tools necessary to draw them into what you're trying to say. And sometimes you may have to use more than one. Sometimes you may have to use every resource that's available to get the student drawn in. Technical relevance, different signs, okay? I got a picture here that talks about using the seatbelt. You know, I added some illustrations to show me what you want me to do. That way there's no confusion in what I'm trying to say. And then there's consequential relevance. There's a couple PowerPoints that I use that I actually have some pictures that I warn the students before. There's no blood or guts or anything like that. But everybody's response to a certain picture may be a different way. I could have just talked about the law. I could have just shown a video. I could have done all of those things. But then there's that one person in the classroom who needs to see the consequences of not doing it the right way. That's where these pictures or these visual aids are relevant. Make sure that they understand that that is make sure they understand as you're teaching by using these visual aids. And then you have emotional relevance. I've taken a couple classes where people have shared some stories with me, and it didn't hurt me to hear it, but it hurt me to hear it. And it did make me think about it, and it carried with me. It goes on as we go through work and as we go through life. I don't want to be a statistic. Sometimes I'll even say, as I go through these statistics, I don't want you guys to become one of them. So do me a favor, every time you're thinking about the hazard associated with what you're doing, think about the control method that you can use, and don't become part of my PowerPoint. Those kind of things can touch them. You can also use their family, their kids. They want to make sure they make it home at the end of the day. It doesn't have to be a sob fest, but it does have to be a relevant, where the rubber meets the road, kind of emotional relevance for some people. Flip charts and posters, talked about the advantages, right? Easy, inexpensive, no power required. They're portable, they're transparent. I taught you a little way to cheat on them a little bit. You can lift them in the view of the audience. You can move them around. You can break them up into groups. They can actually use this particular visual aid. They're not limited to this is the instructors and no one else can touch this. You know, flip charts are great for that. Posters are a good one too. And they stay in view of the audience. So if you draw an illustration or you add something to the classroom that was really good, but you've got to move on to the next subject, adding a flip chart and leaving them open for the students to be able to view throughout the lesson or throughout the class, that's where they're really good. So they're good for interacting with the audience. Not dependent on electricity, we covered that. Little can go wrong, okay, except maybe a few spelling errors. But there are some disadvantages too. Unsuitable for large groups, unless you have multiple and you're going to write it more than once, right? Anxiety provoking for the facilitator with poor handwriting or poor spelling. Now, I just warn everybody, and I've built my confidence through the years. If I'm going to draw something or if I'm going to write something, I just go ahead and address the elephant in the room right out of the gate. All right, before we get started, I'm Phil Harper Jr. My dad named me after him because he figured I could learn to spell his name or mine. I had twice the chance of getting it right. I'm not good at spelling. I'm not good at writing. It looks like chicken scratch, but I'm going to do the best I can. Usually you identify those right out of the gate, and that'll take some of the anxiety away for the facilitator. So flip charts, okay, use block letters work. Make sure the print size that you're using is big, okay? It's big so that everybody can see it. And then it'll eye flow. You know, you don't want everything just cattywampus and then all over the place. You want to move from the top left to the bottom right as you illustrate. Use simple drawings, don't use anything technical. So if you're a really good artist, not necessary to get your point across. And then if you're going to use shapes, use basic shapes. And then there are some shapes that you can use that'll actually pull all this together as well, that you can start building some stuff out of. For example, a circle and like block letters, and then you can make scaffolding, you can make people, little shapes. Like I said, it doesn't have to be anything extraordinary, just to be able to get your point across. Flip charts, you can draw, you know, use different shapes to be able to get people and everything across. And I am running a little bit, I'm trying to wrap up. Hand drawings, just use basic shapes. They can be customizable, create interest and emotion. Anything that you can use in a flip chart, drawing wise, to be able to illustrate your points. Video clips can't be greater. Keep them short. Make sure they're appropriate as well. Keep them relevant to the subject matter that you're teaching. Use humor, but kind of remember that as you're going through and you're telling your jokes, that, you know, if they wanted stand-up comedy, they would have stayed at home. You know, or as Spencer would say, I believe I heard it from him, if they wanted to watch Saturday Night Live, they would have stayed home and watched Saturday Night Live. They didn't come for you to be funny. And if you are going to be funny, it's okay, but make sure it's not pointless. If the student wanted, yeah, exactly. So I want to kind of open it up because we ran through a lot of different material. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen. We ran through a lot of material really quick, or as I'd like to say, 10 pounds of manure and a 5-pound sock is what we got in there really, really quickly. But I want to make sure that with everything that David covered and everything that I've covered, as far as PowerPoints and different visual aids, that any questions that could arise, you know, hey, I use this, just kind of want to open the floor while we've got a few minutes because I see a lot of chats.
Hey, on the flip chart,
yes, sir.
You can make one up kind of ahead of time, like I have in lead, and you've already got your things written out. And then as you put it down, you can write in anything you do, then take you some painter's tape, tear it off and hang it on the wall around the classroom. And that way they can refer back to it.
No, that is a awesome suggestion. One I wish I had mentioned because we have done that in several trainings, and it is a good way to re-illustrate those points. You know, those types of suggestions are good when we get together. Anybody else got anything? I'm trying to read through these questions.
Yeah, Phil, one of the things that, and I'm sure that I saw Spencer do this, but they also have the flip charts that have the like the sticky glue on the back.
Mm-hmm.
So they will automatically stick, or you can use that painter's tape like Corky said, and that works great. But anytime that questions were asked during the class, Spencer would write it down. I'm sure it was Spencer on one of those flip charts, and then we would stick them at different places in the room, and whenever those would get answered during the course of the week, Spencer referred to it as the boneyard. So whenever one of the bones, whenever one of them would get answered, then we would fill it in, and then that would also be a good spot for review on some of the things that was talked about. And you wouldn't get too sidetracked by on time either. Kind of helps to keep you on time. But I thought that was a very good system.
No, yeah, that is a great suggestion there. And what I would urge anyone on here, regardless of whether you've been teaching for a short period of time or a long period of time, being able to introduce different visual aids will make the classroom more creative. And it might be that someone has taken your class more than once. Now, I don't know about your different areas, but in our area, someone has to take OSHA 30 every 4 years in order to stay current with the contract. Most of the job sites are requiring it, so they're taking it every 4 years. So seeing that same student reoccurring in your OSHA 30 class, it's a good thing for us, right? Job security, but it's also an opportunity for you to present all of the material that may have changed, they forgot about, but also to present stuff in a different manner, a different way than you've done it before, to get them re-interested in what you're teaching.
Hey, Phil, I have a question for you.
Yes.
What kind of internet connection do you need to run a flip chart presentation?
You need 1.21 gigawatts and a flux capacitor. That's about all I know for sure.
That's the one nice thing about the flip chart is that you don't need technology. You can do it outdoors, indoors. You don't need a screen. You can basically save those, and that's your PowerPoints, and then keep reusing them. But that's a great point. Flip chart, you can save those. We had when our old director retired, he left a ton of those PowerPoints in the closets. They're gone, but he had a lot of those. Some of you might know Gary, so that's what he used to use.
Yep, Gary Von Buren is actually one of the first people that I've seen use the flip charts, and I remember writing a lot of that stuff down to create my own PowerPoints, and I stole some good stuff from Spencer throughout the years too. But no, I wanted to open the floor. I know we're getting ready to wrap up. We're real close. I just, without going over, I want to make sure everybody had their questions addressed as far as any visual aids, any help with technology. And obviously, we'll be doing this again tomorrow too.
Hey, if I could say something on what I was telling you on the flip charts, lightly writing in a pencil. I am left-handed. Chris, I know, is left-handed, so he could probably justify this. When you're using a flip chart and a dry marker, being left-handed, as you're writing, you end up with a big old sheet of paper, looks like a cat's been walking all over. Okay? So with them letters lightly wrote on there, and now this is where you get the students, now they're watching you write them backwards and correctly. Now that will amaze them sometimes.
That's awesome. Thanks, Jason. Hey, Phil, great job. I appreciate it.
Thanks,
Anybody's
sir.
got any, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, it's all yours.
I was just going to say, if anybody's got any closing questions, anything else to add for the day? No.
I'll just make a comment, Kevin, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
People are having issues on the files that you and I shared, so I'll upload mine to my OneDrive and I'll send you the link. So if you need that PowerPoint or if you want it, feel free, just download it. So I'll upload it to my OneDrive account. That way.
I was thinking too, and this is just a thought, but anything that we shared that somebody is interested in, maybe we could create a shared file at the end, send it out to everyone, and they could pick and choose, download what they want off of that drive, or shared file. If you guys are good with that, that would probably work too. These files get awful big for email, and that's the best thing. That is one thing cloud-based that has really helped out. And David talked about that too, as far as transferring it from one computer to another, and that works great for that. Anyways, if you guys are good, then what tomorrow looks like, we're going to have the exciting topic of record keeping. I know everybody's going to have trouble sleeping tonight, waiting for that one, right? And we've got, if you do, just delve into 1904 and we'll talk about it more tomorrow. But if you guys would, if you'd have your CFRs, if you received one, if you'd have it available tomorrow, we'll probably dig in a little bit. The two topics, one of them being record keeping, is we'll probably look at our CFRs on that, and also confined space too. I kind of like, with confined space, I like to work out of the manuals or out of the CFR instead of, I really do not like to use PowerPoints in the confined space. It could really lull you to sleep. We'll just take up tomorrow. Again, we got record keeping in the morning. Dave is going to do ICRA. Then after lunch, Phil's going to hit us with using the portal. So he's going to help us out there, and confined space and construction, part AA is what we're going to look at. To close it out, if you guys are good, I'm good. Good night. Yeah.
See you tomorrow.
Yes.
Thank you. See you tomorrow.
Thank you. We'll see you.
Thanks.
On seeing, Hans.